mouse pads anymore. They still need them.
I know. Like he did, they used to be like.
Remember, Judy?
Oh,
Oh, you weren't? Yeah.
I mean, it was like, they were all over the place, everybody was like,
Yeah.
So,
Also, I was
yeah,
curious about
make a
some.
motion like this during planning commission, right? Okay.
Well, look at this. We have a crowd, an audience. Like we should sing or something.
Today, the
I don't
20.
think that's what they're here
Oh,
for.
look who's here.
There's Kenny.
Look who's here, Kenny.
We do
Where
need
is Michelle here?
all of the seats.
She had hurt her knee, but she didn't have to have surgery.
Guess so.
Oh, did you?
Am I missing
Maybe
one?
she's on one.
We don't know if she does, she usually does show up right at 6. Yeah, she always comes right
She's the coach. Yeah, I know. I know.
can't read the.
She was like the assistant coach.
Oh, that's Michelle. Thanks.
There we go. See, Kenny came. Look at that. All right. Well, Michelle's not here. Michelle's not here, so we're showing up. Christy, have you heard from Michelle?
I haven't. Usually she shows up right at 6, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
How do I take your hat off?
And
Yeah, I would have.
it's 6, so.
Have we got
I know, right?
the okay from the booth yet?
Yep.
All right, I have 6 o'clock just passed. Guys ready?
Yep.
All right, we will start as Board of Adjustments this evening. We'll call that to order. Roll call.
Foley,
Here?
Bomer,
Here?
Kribel,
Here.
Dockery,
Here.
Walker, Colby,
Here.
Dermingson,
Here?
Bush,
Here.
Layton,
Here.
Holmquist,
Here.
Jefferson here, Dunleavy,
Here.
Armstrong.
Here.
Okay.
All right, we have minutes from the December 12th, 2023 Board of Adjustments meeting to approve.
I move to approve the meetings from the December 12th, 2023 meeting. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, are there any unscheduled citizens to speak to anything that is not on the agenda this evening? Okay. Any amendments to the agenda? All right, then we'll go ahead and open public hearings. Starting with the 207 Poncha Boulevard variance request. Take it away.
Perfect. I will take it away, Greg. Variance request for 207 Poncha Boulevard. The applicants, Brandon and Nina Bonneville, are requesting approval to receive a variance for the minimum setback of 8 feet required for the side yard setback of the primary structure. The applicants are requesting a minimum allowed side yard setback of 4 feet for the construction of an addition on the eastern portion of the primary structure. They are located and live at 207 Poncha Boulevard. This lot is known as 15 and 16 Block D in the subdivision Eddie Brothers Addition in Salida, Chaffee County, Colorado. Process. Variances are addressed in the city's Code of Ordinances, Section 16.4-180, zoning variances. Variances may be granted from the standards of the underlying zone district and shall be authorized for a maximum height, minimum floor area, maximum lot coverage, minimum lot size, minimum setbacks, and parking requirements. Board of Adjustment holds a public hearing after 15 days advance notice of the hearing. The public hearing shall be held at which any person may appear or be represented by an agent or attorney. The board may describe appropriate conditions and safeguards in conformity with the zoning title of the city code. And here are our staff observations. The subject property is located in the single-family residential R1 zone district. All other dimensional standards of the property meet the requirements of the R1 zone district. Staff received a letter regarding the variance request from the adjacent neighbor in support of this variance. Applicant's reasoning for the variance is that the location is ideal for avoiding egress issues and potential drainage issues. Variance approval criteria.
You can just go through each, you don't have to read the individual ones, but just go into the response and staff notes.
Sure. They have to meet the 4 requirements. First one is special circumstances exist. So here, applicant's response for this is bathroom addition needs to be on the east side in order to avoid blocking egress for existing bathroom or existing bedroom, my apologies. It would also create drainage problems if placed on the south side of the house. Staff noted, given the potential for drainage issues and requirement for existing egress, the lot does create a special circumstances requiring the bathroom addition to encroach into the setback. Since there isn't another logical location on the property or structure, staff concludes that this criterion is met. Substantial detriment. Applicant's response to this is the proposed addition will not impact the neighbors or any public right-of-way. Staff notes regarding this, the 4-foot setback significantly encroaches into the 8-foot required setback from the R1 zone district, potentially creating an issue for the adjacent neighbor. However, the neighbor has submitted a letter in support of this variance. Any adverse impacts? Applicant's response to this. The proposed addition will not impact the natural environment or the surrounding properties. There will still be a 4-foot side setback on the side property line. Staff notes, staff proposes 4-foot side setback does not create a significant adverse impact to the natural environment or surrounding properties. Minimum variance, the applicant's response to this is the requested variance is the minimum necessary to create a usable bathroom. Staff notes, setbacks help provide privacy and to address basic safety issues, distance between buildings, decrease the potential damage in case of fire, provide the room necessary for a homeowner to maintain his or her buildings or their own property, and provide for solar access and ventilation. Since the neighboring property is meeting the standard setback requirement of at least 8 feet, the addition would be a minimum of 12 feet distance away from the neighboring structure, adhering to the building and fire code standards.
You can just skip to the required actions unless you want to cover any of the review agency stuff.
So review agencies, most of them were fine with it. There was a question from Atmos Energy about adjusting where their meter might be if it's located in that area, but that's with the applicant. And then building deputy official, Chad Chadwick, walls built within 5 feet of fire separation line must be constructed with a 1-hour fire rating per International Residential Code. Openings are limited to 25% of the wall area. 1-hour fire protected soffit assembly will be required. So just more standard stuff for building requirements on their end. Required action by the board. So the board shall confirm that adequate notice was provided. The board shall conduct a public hearing, and the board shall make the findings whether or not criterias 1 through 4 of the above sections are met by the applicant. So you have option A or B, A being the variance request meets the criterias 1 through 4, or option B, the variance request does not meet all the criteria.
Thank you, John. Questions for staff?
Chairman?
Yeah.
We do need to identify who's going to be voting on this item.
Dan was here first. I believe you'll be voting.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody but Kenny Layton
Correct.
on this one, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks. Okay. Questions for staff? No questions? All right. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come up and tell us a little something about it? You don't have to, but you certainly may come up. Please come on up and, yeah.
If you,
Please
if you
come up-
speak up to
come
the,
right to the mic
microphone
there.
right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions about, what we plan to do, I feel like they were all pretty well answered in the application, but.
Yeah, one quick, what is the current bathroom situation in the house?
Like, how many bathrooms do we have?
Yeah,
We have 1 and 3/4 baths in the house. It's a 3-bedroom house.
okay, thank you.
Could you describe what the drainage issue would be?
Sure. Yeah, the slope of the property is from the west to the east. And when we have heavy rainfall, we have a sidewalk that runs along the whole backside of the house on the south side. And we have a pretty good significant flow during like heavy rains. So if we were to push out on the south side of the building, there would be a collection area pretty much that would be right up against the foundation.
So it'd be draining to the,
Right.
Right.
Kind of, if we kind of be going this way into, like, if we popped out completely south
Yeah.
rather than east, then it can pass.
okay.
It's kind of a big issue.
Oh, I just have a quick question. I did note that the agencies, Atmos and the building department, had comments. You're prepared to meet all of their
Absolutely.
requirements
Yeah.
and,
Absolutely.
okay.
The way where the meter is for Atmos does not need to be relocated or moved in its current place. It's fine.
Yeah, the primary question was where does the gas line run, whether it comes from the 7th Street side or from Poncha Boulevard. But we're going to have them come out and locate, make
Right.
sure.
Whatever
before
they
we
need
start
to do to
digging.
make it compliant is what
Absolutely.
you're going to
When
do.
they did the sidewalks, they already flagged it, but we'll obviously have them redo it again. But it comes right down our driveway on that east side.
Right. And the fire, and the,
Off Poncha Boulevard.
and the firewall issue, even though you are 12 foot from the neighbor, you're still going to comply with the
Right,
building
the
code?
1-hour fire rating.
Yes, okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? We may come up with something, but you can
might.
have a seat. And thanks for your time. and
Thank
Have a
you.
seat. We may ask you back up. All right, is there anybody from the public here to speak to this issue? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move to commissioner discussion on this. Who wants to start?
Seems pretty straightforward. I'd like to make a motion, if I could.
All right,
Make a motion to approve the 207 Poncha Boulevard variance request as to meet the criteria for the zoning variance.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the variance at 207 Poncha Boulevard. Any further discussion? Okay,
Wilmer,
Yes?
Foley,
yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, that brings us to 135 West First Street, the Sundry variance request.
All right. This request is to receive a variance from the maximum building height of 35 feet in the C2 Central Business District. The property, located at 135 West First Avenue, is in the C2 district with the HPO, the Historic Preservation Overlay, and the CBEO, the Central Business Economic Overlay. And the applicant, the Sundry LLC, is represented by Nathan Young, who is here as well this evening. So for a variance, there's the required showing of the 4 items that we just discussed. And for this particular application, the special circumstances exist such that strict application would result in undue hardship or practical difficulties for the owner. The special circumstances in this case, do you want to go to this page? Yeah. Are twofold. One is that the slope of the property from the front to the back of the property there's a 2-foot difference in the elevation in the way that we measure building height is the average. So even if they were to build a 35-foot structure on the site, it would be measured as 36 feet at the back of the property, because the back of the property is slightly higher. So with this request, which is for the purple area to go up to 38 feet in height, and the blue area, which is just the elevator shaft, the request is to go up to 40 feet in height. The green area is not part of this request. That will stay within the limitations. It'll actually stay the front part as a one-story structure, and then the next part of it is two-story, but under 35 feet. So the applicant intends to use the site as an entertainment venue, a performance venue with a secondary theater in it. And because of that unique use and the unique structural requirements of that venue on that back portion of the lot, the special circumstance that exists is that for a venue like that to be successful today, it creates an undue hardship because of the added height needed to achieve the way that the venue needs to be laid out for accessibility and sight lines. The second piece, or the second requirement for variances, is that they would not create a substantial detriment to the public good or substantially impair the intent and purpose of this chapter, the code, or the city's comprehensive plan. And as I mentioned, this site has basically 3 layers of zoning on it. And when you look at the purposes of those zoning, the C2, the HPO, and the CBEO, they are very much for, to promote a vibrant downtown by the use of all citizens and visitors, and to keep the historic nature of the downtown, what has been happening. This site is not actually in the historic district. The HPO is different. It just means it needs to kind of be complementary to the historic district. And the existing buildings on either side of it, there is a building that exceeds 35 feet. You've got the unique theater that goes up to about 39, and then you've got a piece of the Sherman Hotel that where the roof goes up to about 37. There are other buildings in the historic downtown that are taller than 35 feet as well. So in keeping with the criteria for the zone districts, for those layers of the zoning, for example, in the CBEO, part of it is to ensure that future development be designed and planned in a manner that's compatible with keeping a viable downtown commercial district. So all of these things kind of come together to say that this variance, by allowing this to become a performance venue, and let me state that it's not the use that's up for the variance, but the use that's requiring the extra height. And so by allowing that, it is achieving the goals of these districts. And then in regards to the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan actually states that zoning should not be an impediment to the downtown and other areas and should not restrict innovative commercial development. So this particular site has been unutilized for some years now. So for this use to come in and try to make use of it with what works for this proposal, it basically allows this use to happen, and states that the zoning should not be an impediment to that. The third item, the requested variance would not result in significant adverse impacts to the natural environment or the surrounding properties and neighborhoods. So the applicant has designed the project kind of to a very reasonable extent to address some of the to address the neighboring properties. For example, in C2, you can build 0 lot line, so lot line to lot line. And even if there's an existing building with windows, you're allowed lot line to lot line. They actually are making 2 notches out of their proposed structure so that they will avoid covering up the windows on the adjacent building that the proposal wraps. So that is something where they're trying to take into account the neighbors and those existing properties. So, and then as far as the neighborhood goes and other surrounding properties, as I mentioned previously, there are other buildings adjacent and nearby that are at these very similar heights. And yeah, you can see there the unique theater being just a smidge higher than what is planned for the building, with the elevator shaft just being right above that. The variance, the portion of the building that they're requesting on that is just for the green portion of that building, is where the variance would take effect. And by right, they could do anything below that, the full property, and up to the adjacent buildings. And then lastly is the granting of the request, the minimum variance needed. And this is the minimum variance needed to create a desirable performance venue, one that will have good accessibility features and seating. So, and the applicant can speak to any of these, but can speak to more about why this is the minimum variance needed to achieve this particular plan. So with that, the recommended findings are there for you, that the variance is in conformance with section 16.4.180, and staff recommends that the Board of Adjustment approve the sundry variance. So I'm here if you have any questions, and the
Thank you.
applicant is here as well.
Questions for staff?
I don't really have a question, I just want a clarification. As I understand it, the only thing that we're discussing here tonight is the height variance of 38 and 40 feet for the wall structure and the elevator shaft. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, and anything else in terms of design or features or anything like that is not really in our purview for this meeting. Is that correct?
No, that is not, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
That is not part of the.
Okay. Thank you very
variance
much, just for
request.
clarification.
A question regarding the elevator. Is the purpose of the elevator for general access, or is it for ADA compliance, or both?
I know that there's definitely ADA compliance component to it, but the applicant can address that more
Okay,
specifically.
I'll wait to hear it from the applicant then. Thank you.
Was this previously a performance venue?
It was a movie theater. And so the plan is a performance venue and a movie theater tucked in as well.
Was a movie theater a reasonable use of this property?
It
Sure.
was for years.
It was for
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
So how is this the minimum variance necessary to make this a reasonable use of the property?
I guess if somebody thought it was economically viable to just do the movie theater, and if that worked, then, I mean, that's a decision for you to make. This is the proposal that's before us after the building was vacant for a while, so.
But we're here to decide, I'll wait till Commissioner comment.
There's great pictures of the front of the building and how it's going to look new, but are there any of the back where the variance is being requested?
Not from, there is one at the very end, submitted by, in a letter. So if you go to the very end of the packet, actually. If you can zoom in on that. That's,
Can we make it bigger?
That's just the back of the building now, though, right? So you don't have
A rendering.
schematic, like a rendering like they've got of the front of the back of what it would look like with the variance.
The one that's from the elevation from the side.
there's the side, there's the cross-section of the building.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant too.
Photos, okay.
I say I got it too big to.
You guys have any other question? Are they still looking for that? Or different?
It's in the staff report.
Oh,
It's
it
the one
is?
where I had that little green section.
Oh,
Yeah.
So they're right there, if you want to zoom in on that one. So you can, so there's that cross-section.
Right.
Now, or there's the photo of the existing
Right.
building that's back there.
Okay, thanks.
Catherine, so on that back portion of the building, does that portion abut the other buildings where they're asking for the additional height?
So the other buildings don't extend that far.
Okay, so this is more or less, we're talking about the 38 feet, it's more or less a standalone piece? Maybe
Well,
the
it's
applicant can-
It's connected to the front.
Right.
But so on that, you see the two hatched areas, there's one
Right.
that's blue. That is the extent and how far back the unique building goes.
Right, so everything, as we're looking at it, to the right of that does not abut another building to the sides?
I don't believe so.
Okay, and we can confirm that with the applicant.
Any other questions for staff? Or do you want to, you ready for the applicant to come on up? All right, come on up.
Hi, Sarah Whittington, 333 Maxwell Street. I am representing right now the Sundry, but Nathan Young is also here, and he's the owner. We're both available. So, just as, I have pictures at the back, and I can pass that around.
Great.
So do you want me to bring those up right now, so you?
Sure.
So I'll just start with you, Judy, and you can look at them. So we appreciate this opportunity to come before you and ask for the variance request from your overall height from the land use code. The land use code's height, maximum height is 35 feet. We are requesting 38 feet for the back portion of our building. Once again, this green section here, with the elevator shaft, which is like 80 square feet, to be 40 feet tall. What Catherine said about the property is the main issue, is that we have a slope from front to back, so from F Street to the alley of 2 feet. And so when the maximum height is 35 feet, it actually averages out, so the back portion of our building can only be 34 feet tall. And that because of where it is above the grade line. Because it's a commercial building, we need to have access on grade level at all exits. And this building is big enough that it needs 2 exits, so one on the F Street side and one on the alley side. And so that's why I'm saying that from the alley, it would only be 34 feet tall in order to make my average work around the property. We are not coming to you for this variance request. We're not taking this lightly or using it as a design tool. We are only coming for this variance after fully exploring all of our design issues. The variance request is a minimum to have this type of facility in this area. The variance request is in compliance with all 4 of your variance approval criteria. As I said, the main issue is this slope from front to back. The other thing to note is that directly across the alley, the property across the alley from us also then pops up another 2 feet. You can see that in your packet that we submitted. So it continues to slope. And so that next property behind us is 2 feet higher. So once again, anything that gets put on that property can be fully 35 feet, and we will be right there in that kind of average between it all. So we're looking at a multi-purpose venue, and which is a permitted use in the district, and it's an encouraged use to have an active and vibrant downtown. It brings in commercial business, it brings in pedestrians, it just, you know, will bring in a lot of economic pluses for the area, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to pursue this project. It also will complement the adjacent buildings and its overall height. Whereas our lot is fully covered right now with the story bill. So it's going to be a fully covered lot. It's just going to be higher now. And we worked with stepping it back to try and keep our initial streetscape the same. So we still have that same pedestrian view from F Street, and trying to put the bulk of the height in the back where we have area for a venue. This kind of venue idea does have some unique criteria that's involved with it alone. And you do need to have some volume in there in order to get your sight lines and have people be able to see the theater, the stage. And we're going to put in a movie theater and then use part of the venue as also a movie theater. So there's going to be a mixture of tables and floor area and then fixed seating. And so in this is the main area we're looking at. This is still at the first floor, and then from that cross-section you guys had, we go up to the second floor, and then we do fixed seating up from there. This movie theater starts on the second floor and has fixed seating that rises up. Per code for accessibility, you need to put your accessible seating in the back 60% of your area. So you're probably used to theaters where they have the wheelchair up in front. That's no longer the case now. It has to be in the back 60%. And so we want to be fair and equitable and provide direct access for people who have mobility issues and need to have accessible seating. And the best option for us is to use our elevator, which will also be used for everybody can use the elevator. But for somebody who is in a wheelchair, can come up to the third floor and come directly into.
Excuse me, can you speak into the microphone? That there's 12 attendees I can't hear.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so from the elevator, you can come into the back of the theater, and you and the companion seat can be there in that appropriate positioning for the movie theater. And then in the venue, on the second to the, and the fixed seating will also be a movie theater. So we need to provide the accessible seating in that area also, and that's also directly accessible from our elevator in this instance. So that is one of the main reasons that we're asking for that height issue, is that we want to be able to provide a facility for everybody that they can all use. And is there something? Okay, so we're available for questions. So,
Thank you. Is there any questions right off the bat?
Hey, Sarah, so my initial question was
Okay, hold on.
I just want, do you have questions for that? I just wanted to mention one thing
Sure.
that I didn't point out. So on the unique theater, while the bulk of the building is 39 feet high, the front parapet and facade goes up as high as 45 feet. So just to put that into historical context, I didn't mention that extra bit.
a lot of buildings downtown have that kind of decorative feature.
So my question was back to the elevator and the ADA compliance. So it's certainly improving the experience for people who need that access, but is the elevator required? then because of where that needs to be located?
Some type of conveyance is required because of where it would have to be located. If we didn't have the elevator, we'd have to put in other lifts in order to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for applicant at this time?
I had one other, the property to the east that has that gable, how high is that gable?
It's 45 feet.
45 feet.
Yeah.
The unique.
Just mentioned.
Yep.
Right.
On the unique, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems
It's
like.
just outside of the photo here.
Yeah, standing across the street, I don't know if you can even see the elevator shaft.
Well, I will be clear here. These photos do have the full building.
Right.
We're showing you can't see it because it is back there. Our building is back there. It's just you can't see it from these angles. You can't see it from standing on F Street. You won't be able to see the tall portion of it. And that's what we were trying to show here. Of course, you will see it from the back,
Right.
but you're not going to see it from the front.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, Chairman. As far as who's voting, would you like to switch your voting members at this point?
No, I think we just keep that consistent.
Keep it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Bush will be voting.
Okay, that being said, no more questions for the applicant. We would move on to public input. Is anybody here to speak to this? Merrill?
I'd like to preface this by saying I was requested to keep this to 3 minutes. It's been cut in half, and I will do my best to keep it to 3 minutes and change. This is a follow-up to a meeting that took place with the applicant last Thursday, and a letter submitted in your packet along with the photo from my property from last week. So by introduction, I'm Merrill Bergen. I'm co-owner of a mixed-use building at 126.5 F Street, a full-time resident of our sole and only second-floor home since 2004. I'm speaking as a longtime advocate for vital downtowns and also for the common good, one that works for everyone. I'm an immediate neighbor to the rear. The height variance seems largely driven by the need for equitable accessibility to all levels of the venue, and I support that. A partial loss of view is not the issue for me. The real issues are related, and they're going to be a challenge, according to what Ms. Bomer said earlier. They relate to the use of the property with noise and parking. So I've given a lot of thought to this since last weekend, trying to find conditional possibilities that might allow us to do the right thing, all of us. If you feel there's grounds to grant this variance, use your authority to do so with conditions to, quote, minimize adverse effects from the proposed variance on the general health, safety, and welfare of the city. You and the staff are the experts, but my suggested conditions to talk about include, number one, the roof deck. That is the green area that was shown earlier. The roof deck, I believe, should have a specific prohibition against loudspeakers or music of any kind on the deck itself. Open-air music plus a liquor license that includes this roof level is a guarantee of unacceptable noise and an enforcement nightmare. Second point, all sound needs to be contained inside the four walls of the venue, even with doors to the exterior or the roof that are open. So that's concern number one. Number two has to do with parking. In my reading, I believe that off-street parking is not required by 16-8-80 in the CBEO. If that's correct, it's insane with what we're talking about here. This is a 500-person capacity venue. Even at night, there is a certainty that people will be parking up and down the rear alley, blocking first responder access and access by property owners to their lots, driveways, and garages. So I have a number of things that might help that are not perhaps directly within the purview of this group, but I'm putting the city on notice here that if they're not addressed and you in good conscience approve this variance, we're going to have a disaster. Specifically, that planning recommend amending 16-880A, removing the language that no off-site spaces are required in the CBEO because that no longer fits the size of property, replacing with language that includes that, quote, assembly venues, unquote, like this, be required to lease X amount of off-site spaces, tying in with the parking management program that is already underway by the city. three more quick bullets. That the alley be reposted as no parking at any time, fire access, tow zone. 3, that live-only time-limited loading and unloading spaces along the wall be reserved at all time for the use of the performers and the venues. 4, that interstate parking be authorized to enforce parking restrictions in the alley, including requesting towing service if necessary. And finally, that during construction, the designated spaces be posted in the alley for, again, live unloading and loading or a trash dumpster, but that contractors be asked to remove their vehicles after they have unloaded and not leave them there all day. That is common in other resort towns, and I think we can do that too. With conditions such as this addressing the above, I support the height variance as a fair trade-off. You have your authority to be able to deal with some of these mitigating conditions, and I think you should use it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Merrill.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'm Walt Harder. Together with Mr. Deason over there, I own the building directly behind this. And we are keenly aware of what's going on here and extremely supportive of Mr. Young's project. Might be a good time to point out that Mr. Young and I have been in discussions for a long time about how to utilize the 30 parking 30 area parking lot that we have right behind it. And I would anticipate that works out just fine. So we'll actually be able to provide more parking than most any other venue downtown has. I'd point out that the steam plant makes music indoors, outdoors, and has no off-street parking, absolutely zero. But we somehow seem to make it work. Downtown's kind of happened this way. Let's see, there was one other point I was going to make. No issue with the height at all. Maybe that's it. Did I leave something out, John?
Excited to see that building be,
Yeah, I mean, you guys are all from around here, so you know how long that thing's been laying like it has. The plans that you have are extraordinary, and I think it's going to add a lot to our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Walt.
Anybody else?
Can I clarify one point?
Sure.
Can you go back to the cross-section? There seems to be a little misconception about where our rooftop deck is. It's really not on the third story. I mean, it's not on the third story roof.
Down
It's
lower.
on the, it's on the third story, but it's not, it's open. It's on the story. Does that make sense? It's not on the roof of the third story. It's on the third story.
On the roof of the second story.
It's on the roof of the second story. Thank you. That would be the way to say it.
Excuse me, Sarah, it's in the front adjacent to F Street, correct?
It's about 70 feet back from F Street.
Okay.
I'm going to point to it, so I'm moving away from the mic for a moment. So,
From First Street.
You can carry that mic, it
From
looks like.
I'm sorry, I meant for,
look at this.
We'll start with that.
Sarah, I misspoke. I meant from First Street.
From First Street.
From,
Is it,
It's First Street, not F Street.
it's,
oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Right.
Why do I keep saying that? But
Because there's
yes,
F.
it is First Street, yes.
yeah.
But you go back about 70 feet, and then we pop up here, and it's this area here. It's not a large area. It's just not. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question of the applicant?
Sure.
I'd like to ask a question of the applicant, the owner, if you could come up. What are your plans for that deck?
For the deck?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's on the same level as the third floor.
Right.
The top of the large venue. It can be utilized during an event. It can be rented.
Mm-hmm.
As most of you are probably looking at us or me saying, what are you doing here? How are you going to survive? Movies don't make a lot of
Right.
money, and neither do live events, but there will be rentals in this space, really all of the space, and the deck will be a part of that.
So,
So it could be used for dining. It could be used to watch the fireworks on 4th of July, just having a drink or whatnot,
So you're not imagining this as a performance venue? You're imagining it as something like the Biker and the Baker upper deck?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a good
That
way
was
to
my
put it.
question.
As I mentioned to Mr. Bergen, our business plan isn't to have music up there or even in the restaurant at the front, at the street level. It's really just in the venue. Having said that, just like Biker and the Baker or elsewhere, I can't say we would never do something like that, but as I told Merrill, 4th of July weekend maybe, we'd obviously have to get the permit, we'd abide by all the rules, even exceed them. But there's really no business plan. It's just, that's one more thing that I don't need to deal with.
And amplified music would require a permit, which would have to come before council, correct?
Sure. Yeah, so that's not much in our plans at all on the deck.
Okay, thanks. All right, there's no one else?
I don't know, I may have somebody online.
Okay.
If there's anyone online that wants to speak to this, please raise your hand.
On the computer, not at home.
Right. Yeah. Let us know. Okay. Nobody has said they want to speak.
Okay, if somebody
but-
pops in, we can,
Sure.
but until then, we will close the public hearing and move to commissioner discussion. Who wants to start this one? Giff?
Can I ask a question of staff at this point? The concerns that Mr. Bergen raised, are they really within the purview of the Board of Adjustment? Or is that something that needs to be dealt with by staff before you issue a license to operate this venue?
So, in the process of a variance, let me read this. The board, in approving the variance, may impose such restrictions and conditions on such approval and the premises to be developed or used pursuant to such approval as it determines are required to prevent or minimize adverse effects from the proposed variance on other land in the neighborhood and on the general health, safety, and welfare of the city.
But the adverse impacts listed, I don't think have anything to do with the variance. I mean, if let's suppose they were magically able to do this at 35 feet, they'd still have the parking problems, they'd still have the noise problems, they'd still have all the other issues. So I don't think that those concerns are the result of granting the variance. They're the result of allowing that business to operate a 500-seat theater.
Yeah, there are codes within our municipal code specific to some of those issues that were brought up by Ms. Bergen as far as noise, parking, et cetera. So those could be enforced or otherwise taken care of through other means, regardless of what's being asked in the variance.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, and I think Nina is on the line, so if this isn't right, Nina, please from the void, direct us. But my understanding is that because the variance, the requested variance is for 2 height overages, up to 38 feet in the elevator shaft. If there were a health and safety issue, or one of the things that you pointed out, Catherine, I would think it would have to relate to the variance that's being requested and not the development itself. Nina?
Yes, that's correct. And so you just really have to look at your factors as to that it relates to the property and the height, and it's not about the use, because it could be the factors would exist no matter what the use of that property was at that height, or if that makes sense.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for anybody? What do you guys think?
I'm good.
I agree with Giff. Although Merrill brings up
Points,
some excellent
yeah.
points, I don't think we really have anything to stand on with that. but that's not really in what we're deciding right now.
I agree.
Anybody want to make a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the sundry variance requests as they meet all of the review standards for zoning variances subject to, it says subject to the following conditions. But I don't think we really have any other conditions, so we're making a motion to approve the variance request.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance for the sundry. Any further discussion?
Dockery,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Walker, oh, sorry. Bomer,
Yes.
Follet,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
And can I ask who seconded that?
Brian did.
Okay, thank you.
He was first to second.
Okay.
Here's the first second.
He's a first second. Thank you. Motion passes.
And staff can take some of the suggestions of Mr. Bergen's and pass it along to other staff.
That would be my hope.
I would.
Because they're
say-
legitimate concerns. I just, don't think it's within our purview tonight.
All right. Excellent. Excited.
Congratulations.
All right, so we would need to adjourn here as the Board of Adjustments.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn as Board of Adjustments. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, let's stay here. Let's just keep talking.
Does anybody need a 3-minute break?
We
or-
have a little break?
Yeah, we need just a couple minutes up here.
Okay, let's have a little break.
Chairman.
Yeah, okay, a little break.
Planning Commission, there we go. There we go.
I'm going to. So on this, so I've got it. Okay. I'm going to start off, I don't know why it says, I'm going to start off with. Okay.
Sound was
Just the
indecent.
first 2 pages. Then I'm going to go to staff report and go to criteria.
Okay, and the staff reports.
Then it's here.
Okay, so that's right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then.
So you're gonna start like this. Oh, no. That's theirs. Okay, that's not your
Let's
name.
start with that, yeah.
Not, yeah. No, there's not a specific time limit, yeah, but, you know,
We lose
just.
Bill for a bit?
You could go ahead and open
We
up.
get going?
Yeah.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will,
Good.
we will start this planning commission meeting. We'll go ahead and call that to order with a roll call.
Foley,
Here.
Bomer,
Here?
Kribel,
Here.
Dockery,
Here.
Walker, Colby,
Here?
Derwingson,
Here.
Bush,
Here.
Layton,
Here.
Jefferson,
Here.
Dunleavy, here, Armstrong,
Here.
and Almquist is here.
All right, we have minutes. I'm looking at, no, they are as well from December 12th. Approval of the minutes from December 12th, 2023, is that right?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the
Got a meeting
minutes
from
from December 12th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve minutes from the December 12th Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Any amendments to this agenda?
No.
No. All right, we'll go ahead. We just have the one public hearing this evening for major impact review for the Angel View Plan Development and Major Subdivision. Take it away, staff.
Actually, before I get started, we will have two motions on this because we have a motion for the plan development and then a motion for the major subdivision. So the applicant is Harder Diesel Holdings LLC, and they're being represented by Ronnie Pelusio of Pelona Architects. They are requesting major impact review for a plan development overlay and major subdivision of the remaining lots within the Angel View Minor Subdivision along County Road 120, and the little square that is 0.57 acre parcel along 120. It's incorporated into the development. The proposals for 42 residential lots with a mix of single-family, duplexes, and multifamily units. The total number of units proposed is 115 and 1.19 acres of public open space and trails. So the major impact review applications are for the plan development, and the deviations they're requesting is minimum lot size. So the minimum lot size in the R3 zone district is 5,625 square feet for detached units for single family, and 2,400 square feet of lot area for attached units. The applicant is requesting minimum lot size of 5,063 square feet for single family detached, and a minimum lot size of 2,160 square feet for attached units, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes. The other deviations are minimum setbacks. The setback requirements in the R3 zone district are 20 feet from the front, 20 feet from the rear, and 5 feet from the sides. The applicant is requesting a 12-foot front setback. No deviations from the rear or sides are requested. The maximum lot coverage for structures in the R3 is 45% maximum lot coverage, and they're requesting 55% lot coverage. And landscape area, it's 30% in the R3 zone district. They're requesting 25% landscape area. And it appears that all other dimensional and parking requirements will be met by the development. The one thing I don't have in the staff report, but I should mention here, is if they're allowed the 12-foot front setback, they don't also get the 25% encroachment for a covered porch. It would be just 12 foot for whatever is built. And And the second request is the approval of major subdivision to subdivide the property into 42 residential lots, several HOA maintained outlots, plus right-of-way and dedicated open spaces. I'm going to go through the criteria really quick and then go back to open space trails and then the inclusionary housing. The plan development evaluation criteria, minimum dimensional standards. Again, they're requesting deviations from minimum lot size for detached and attached units, lot coverage, landscape, and setbacks. Trails, the applicant has agreed to provide an 8-foot trail connecting the public trail between County Roads 120 and 140 along Shepherd Road, and an 8-foot trail from County Road 120 to along Tenderfoot Road to the public park. Ownership and maintenance, the owners will have a homeowners association to maintain the interior park, stormwater detention, and mid-block pedestrian connections. Water and sewer, the applicant has provided the civil engineering plans, and they are being reviewed by Public Works Department and the city engineering consultants. City engineering consultants are still reviewing. We have not heard back on that. We have recommended a condition that prior to approval of a subdivision improvement agreement, that we have all the civil plans approved. Density, the applicant is not requesting an increase in density in the overall allowable density for the development. The inclusionary housing requirements and incentives are explained in the subdivision section, and like I said, I'll go through that in a little bit. R3 zone district requires 2,400 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. The developer was allowed density incentives of 2,100 square feet of lot area per dwelling from Confluent Park and major subdivision for the Angel View development. The maximum allowed density is calculated on the entire 11.9 acre site, which is, they're allowed 246 units, and they're proposing 115. Relationship to subdivision requirements, we will go through those under the subdivision review standards. Improvement standards, the applicant is not requesting to deviate from the design standards. Will meet the road, driveway, and sidewalk standards as required in Article 8. Maximum height, they are not requesting a height variance. Gross building floor area, there are no uses other than residential. Permitted uses, again, no other proposed uses than residential. Transportation design, the development provides connectivity from County Road 120 to 140 through the existing Angel View development. They did have the traffic analysis submitted, which was incorrect. And I did email you the updated, well, maybe I didn't email out the updated. I did receive the updated traffic analysis from their engineer, who is here to speak on this. But so the traffic analysis stated, and I'm going to say the correct numbers, stated that the traffic increase from the proposed development will generate 72, not 37 a.m. peak, and 92 p.m. peak hour trips, not 75 peak trips. The maximum impacts will be seen on County Road 120 with 33 right turns and turns into the subdivision and 18 left turns out of the subdivision. And again, their engineer will speak to that piece of it. David Lady was fine with that. He said he will review the updated traffic analysis to see if there's anything glaring, but he was okay with it. The other thing Public Works Director recommended was removing 2 of the mid-block connections because he thought having 3 mid-block connections were unnecessary and took up on-street parking. Development standards, the applicant is requesting deviation from minimum landscape area to accommodate more efficient development pattern and will meet the remaining standards of Article 8. Energy efficiency, they're required to meet the energy standards of building codes. Residential uses, the PD shall provide for a variety of housing types, densities, and common open space. Excuse me. The applicant is proposing major subdivision, several HOA outlots with single-family duplexes, townhomes, ADUs, and apartments. Fiscal impacts, the city will provide, the city will provide police and fire protection and serve the project with water and sewer through the public mains. Water and sewer system development fees will offset long-term costs in expanding those systems. The fees for fair contributions to public school sites will be required per residential unit to help offset impacts on the school district, and partial payment for the remaining open space will be required for each unit per direction of the Public Parks and Recreation Director. Higher level of amenities. The proposed public park on the western edge of the Angel View development will be part of a larger park once combined with future anticipated open space of the adjacent property. The applicant is providing outdoor spaces, pedestrian connections throughout the Angel View property. Okay, so the evaluation for major plan developments, staging of developments, they are going to do the project in 2 phases. Do you want to
Oh, there we are.
Yeah, right there. So the first phase is kind of already underway. They are building apartments on Lot 1, and then there'll be duplexes, townhomes on Lots 2, 3, and 4, and then Phase 2 is in the blue. So Phase 1 is in the green up there. Phase 2 will be the remainder of the development. Parks, trails, and open space, I will get right back to that. So for the major subdivision plat review, the criteria comprehensive plan, the subdivision is consistent with the comp plan, zone district standards, the applicants requesting exemptions with the plan development application. Future streets, Tenderfoot Road is a future road, and it will have a connection to the adjacent property. It goes right to the public park and will allow for future connections to keep going. Architecture. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. So the architectural standards is intended to prevent monotonous streetscapes and offer consumers a wider choice of housing styles. To avoid uniformity and lack of variety in design amongst housing units within the subdivision, no residential facade elevation shall be repeated more than once every 5 lots on the same side of the street. So they are going to have plat notes with those terms. They're actually kind of beefing up the terms a little bit. And I underlined it under the streetscape diversity. They have all the terms of the land use code, but they added no single-family duplex buildings or townhouse buildings. Residential facade elevation shall be repeated more than once every 5 lots. So they did kind of beef up that, so we will have some variation out there. And I think the applicant will show that in their application materials. Codes, subdivision will comply with all city building, fire, and safety codes. Visionary housing. Okay, now let's go to open space.
Can we go back to this?
Yeah. Sorry, there's a lot here. So with the open space, the applicants were showing quite a bit of their pocket parks and the sidewalks, trails and everything as part of their open space. The recreation director is accepting the public park dedication 0.72 acres. And then adjacent to that, it's part lot 28, but it's going to be an easement to the city. It's really hard to explain. It's lot 28's property, but the city will maintain it as part of the park. And so that combined is 0.81 acres of park space. And the director is fine with that. But he said that with that easement on lot 28, he wants a detailed and clear easement agreement before this city will maintain it. The other piece of the open space that the director is accepting is the 8-foot trail connections, the one between 120 and 140 along Tenderfoot Road. That's 0.38 acres. Yeah, and then, so both of those together, 0.38 acres. The total public park and trail connections provided is 1.19 acres, leaving 1.11 acres of open space not being provided. So the open space requirement for this is 0.02, is it 0.20? How's that explained?
0.02 acres per.
Acres per
0.2 hundredths of an acre per residential unit. So for the 115 units, they're required 2.3 acres. So since they're short, the director is requesting they pay what they are short in providing as open fees in lieu of open space, which is broke down to 0.48% of the park space not being provided times our fees in lieu are $5,000 per unit, so $276,000 for the parks. And I think, oh, Diesel is here. So Diesel may speak to that here in a few minutes. And then the inclusionary housing. So this one, I might have Bill jump in, because this one is pretty confusing. They're not required to provide affordable housing. The deed restricted inclusionary housing within the development because the developer provided more than the required number of IH units in Confluent Park and received credits for the Angel View development per ordinance 2020-01. The developer was allowed up to 750 units without needing to provide additional deed-restricted units for Confluent Park and future phases of Angel View. Without the Confluent Park agreement, the requirement would have been 19.2 inclusionary housing deed-restricted units. But they have that agreement and are not required to provide it. So with that, with the subdivision and inclusionary housing agreement from Confluent Park, they were allowed to have the density bonus of what inclusionary housing allows, which is 2,100 square feet of land area per unit. So again, they're not going over that, so they're not requesting an increase in the density. With that, you want to go to the, so we have a few conditions for the planned development. Staff has some plat notes that need to be added. The fair contributions public school site plat note, all of the required signature blocks need to be added to the plats. And update the dimensional standards showing the existing R3 requirements in Angel View PD request. I'll remove the existing inclusionary housing comparisons. That's on the table of the planned development plat. The applicant must meet the requirements of the Public Works Director and City Engineering Consultants prior to approval of the subdivision improvement agreement. And prior to building permit submittal in Phase 2, the payment for partial fees in lieu in the amount of $276,000 shall be paid as recommended by the Parks and Rec Director. This amount is calculated as I explained earlier. And then with the subdivision, there are 4 conditions. So the school fees at the signature blocks need to be added to the subdivision plat as well. The language about the architectural needs to be added. And then, this isn't a plat note, but the applicant must meet the requirements of the Public Works Director prior to subdivision improvements. And again, prior to building permit submittal for Phase 2, the partial fees must be paid. And prior to recording the subdivision plat, the developer enter into a subdivision improvement agreement that guarantees the construction of the public improvements that are required for the project. And I can answer any questions you may have. And like I said, Diesel is here if you have any questions of him as well.
Questions or staff?
Are we approving Phase 1 and Phase 2 or just Phase 2?
Both. This is for the overall development. Right now, they're building on Lot 5. They're building the apartments on Lot 5 as a use by right.
Okay, thank you.
I have a general question. And this has come up before when we do plan developments. It doesn't have anything specifically to do with their application, but we've had this before. On page 9, it says, the plan development is a negotiated zone district. Then it goes on to say, planning and council require minimum dimensional standards, including setback, blah, blah, blah. And the word require looks like it's telling us we have to abide by the minimum standards. Minimum is about as low as you can go. I mean, minimum means the lowest you can go in a certain zoning. So I'm just curious, do we abide by that, or can we just disregard? I mean, it says require minimum dimensional standards. And in this particular, they've requested 5 deviations from the minimum standards. We had another one where there were 16 requests for less than the minimum. And I'm just curious, as a planning commissioner, are we bound by that, or is the whole thing just totally open for negotiation? I just am a little confused what my role is, frankly.
So the way that we have interpreted this particular code section is to say that, yes, a minimum standard is required. We have to set that, and that's why each plan development is generally accompanied by a chart that shows what is actually approved by council for that particular development. So in other words, we need to obviously meet building code requirements, but you have the ability to approve a deviation to it, but you need to stipulate what those minimums are.
And that's what they're requesting in that little table.
I see what they're requesting, I'm just,
So that's their
it says
minimums.
required, so required means required. I'm just a little confused. I thought,
If I could interject, isn't the point kind of a PUD is it's kind of a one-stop shop to essentially negotiate what those requirements are? Like, we have the power to change it, essentially.
Yes.
okay.
It is another way of putting it. Absolutely.
Good job.
Well,
Other questions for
I
staff?
had a question. So regarding the fee in lieu payment, that $5,000, what's the basis for that? And has that been adjusted for any inflationary criterion?
That is what our current fees in lieu are. They're $5,000 per unit.
So that's a published value?
Yes, in the fee schedule.
Yes.
Correct. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Aaron?
I have a question for Diesel or for others about the,
Diesel want to come up? You want to fire with your question first, or do you have?
No, we can blame that on Sarah. Looks like a dinosaur.
do you have a presentation?
Well, I think he was wanting to kind of clarify some things, but would you like to ask your question?
I'd like to know the comfort with the fee in lieu of the park. It's an area with a lot of housing. You have the map that shows it's a priority area for more parks. There's not parks close by. Are you comfortable just cutting the requirement in half and taking fees when it seems like it's an area that could use
Right.
a bigger park?
This is very complicated. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to talk to you guys about my stance on this kind of period. And I know that the city of Salida has been accepting fee in lieu for a long time because we had lots of open space and things has changed. We had lots of open lots. We had lots of open space. We had private parks that were owned by people that just hadn't been developed. So I really have been very specifically targeting those areas that have been called out for city growth and the need for public spaces. For me, it's like a health and safety issue as well as quality of life. It is really hard to interject into this system that has already been established where our code doesn't seem to be followed. What's required? We can do whatever we want. Do developers have to build a park? Define develop a park. Like, you guys need to decide that. Because up until now, we've accepted detention ponds as parks in the past. So like, I am pushing back, and I'm pushing back in this case in particular because of the importance of the area. I started at 2.3 acres. Then the park was originally in the middle of the development, and Walt and John were gracious enough to move it to the side because that's the only place that I could glom on more land. And nobody, I'm inherently the bad guy when I show up to these conversations because I'm inherently carving out public space that is not cash. So we've had a very productive back and forths, I feel like, with Walt and John and their team over all of this. When we left the first or second or third meeting, I felt like we had negotiated to about 1.5 acre park. I probably didn't clarify that I meant park where Park 1 is. It came back as a 0.7 acre park with an easement, which I understand that. We have something similar to that down in Confluent at the LITEC project, where there's an easement on a park and it's managed essentially as a park. Then some multi-use paths, yes. That's community benefit. I accept that as community benefit and needed. The other stuff, the HOA-owned stuff, we just can't really accept that as dedicated parkland for the city, in my interpretation. So basically, we just did the math. And besides going back and forth and pushing these guys back to the drawing board, I, in this situation, felt like I could sleep at night because there is close to 2 acres of open space, HOA-owned, trail, like in total. And the park is moved to the side. And we have a big opportunity in the future and some land in the future for getting the parkland, the playing fields that the city needs. We don't get playing fields on 0.7 acre parks. That's not what we need. We have Trailside, we've got Creststone. We need to be creative in putting land together that we can use for the public good. So in this case, I do think this is a healthy development. It's a lot, it's not to my taste. It doesn't matter to me. I'm here for one reason, and it's to advocate for public land. That's my job. So if you want to know where I'm coming from, no, I don't like it. I want 2.3 acres. That's what we're owed by our code. The citizens of Salida are owed that. It's for dogs to go to the bathroom and kids to throw frisbees. But I understand the reality of development and where we are currently because of a decade or two of what has been going on in Salida with whittling parks away to nothing, and accepting fee and lieu because that's what we needed at the time. So, you know, we have some negotiations on like, why were we ever accepting fee and lieu as the lot was being sold? Like, how do we plan to build a park $3,000 at a time when and if a lot sells? So the code doesn't really say anything about when and how the fee and lieu is paid. So just pay it now. Like, it's gonna have to be paid. So if we can get it up front, theoretically negotiate some of the building to the right standards of irrigation and tree plantings and things like that. Like, I wanna see a brighter future for not competition between. I don't want to walk into every meeting being the bad guy because I'm here to ask for more open space.
Can I actually interrupt you? Why would you say you're the bad guy? Your job is to enforce our city codes, right? Like you're going in just saying this is what's required, I think is what you're saying, right? Which is like land taken from the developer in one sense, but it's not necessarily bad from the city's perspective.
And I also, I don't want to stunt development. I also know there are loopholes. I know what they could do here. And I mean, I would not want to drive around there, but they're right. So I can't, and I'm brand new to this game. These guys have been doing this for a long time. And so I don't always necessarily interpret myself as the director of Parks and Recreation as an enforcer of our city code, but I do see opportunities where we need to ask hard questions and really, to be honest, like kind of stop. Like we need a stopping point, just be like, enough. Like, and I've explained to them, like, this is where I'm coming from. This is my goal. This area in particular, hugely valuable for our community's growth and development. As far as open space is required. The golf course is leased, we don't own Holman Field, and all those farm fields are not the city's either. So we can't bank on anything. So I don't want to be adversarial. I want to be smart about how we can develop our town, our city, smartly. And I do think a lot of the design in this is smart. I think the architecture, but, and the variances, like, don't ask me about that. We're just looking at park. Am I comfortable? I can sleep at night knowing that there are, HOA 6 is a detention pond that a dog could poop in. Lot 21 is some open space for breathing room with flowers and trees potentially. And that park number 1 is gonna be useless until we get the rest. We're gonna be driving 2 pickup trucks with lawnmowers to a 0.7 acre park, which is not economical. So that's my line of thinking.
Can I ask a question, Diesel? So in your negotiation with the developer, did you have a plan B?
Not here. I mean, I don't know what it could possibly be.
So there was no other proposal or other option to achieve what they want to achieve in general terms and to give you more park space? Give us more park space.
No, and they can probably answer this better because, again, I came to this role, they had already had a concept. And it really made sense to me. When I sat down at the table, they already paid for this plot of land, given a certain history of development in Salida. They already had an idea, a general gist of how this was gonna go down. And to have somebody just totally pull the rug out and be like, code 2.3, sorry, you're gonna lose millions of dollars on this. Like, that's just silly too. Like I couldn't come in like that. So I didn't really I mean, I was on my heels the first meeting that we came in.
Right.
But again, I felt like there was back and forth. They moved it to the side.
Right.
My plan B is the next property.
Okay, that answers my question, thank you. So, just in general terms, a hypothetical situation, someone has a plot of land, they want to develop it, they're considering all the layout. It goes to staff first, planning staff, correct?
Well, it's like
So at
the
what point,
pre-application
at
meeting.
what point does open space become a priority in that discussion?
I kind of want to know that too. You know, that's, I mean, they have their systems and we get our review of, that's the first official. I wasn't invited to these pre-application or conceptual review meetings until Bill took on his role. I had never been to one.
But you are now?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then it is a bummer. Sometimes you see a conceptual plan that's published on a website somewhere for something and you're like, whoa, like, nah, no, don't even start thinking that because then I'm the bad guy again. Well, Diesel wants more open space. And yeah, it's not, especially when there is code. I was the principal of an alternative high school. I hid behind the rules and love and logic constantly. These are the rules. It's not me. These are the rules. And we're not in that situation right now. So I'm just kind of here pushing to get back a little bit more to that.
Well, the way I read the rules, it's shall, and it's shall 2.3 acres in this case, or fee in lieu. So the shall applies to the or.
Correct. The rules are being followed.
Correct.
The issue isn't that the rules aren't being followed. If you have a problem, your solution is to change the rule.
We're working on that.
Well, but a plan development is a negotiated opportunity, right? Like we're negotiating the minimum requirements. This is part of those requirements that are part of the negotiations. So.
And it doesn't say in the code, what about a little bit of land and a little bit of fee?
Right.
It doesn't really call that out. So like, it's kind of wide open, like Wild West, like what about $200,000? What about, it's just kind of like, what? Like, this is wild. Like, so just more structure, I think would be appreciated by everybody. And that is what we're working on with the new land use code. So yeah, interpret shall and what does develop mean? What do you mean develop a park? Like,
the standards.
What
is happening to the west, and do you have confidence that that's going to be where you're going to get more of your part for that zone?
A lot of it depends on you guys.
Right.
A lot of it depends on our new code. I mean, we're running out of opportunity to put a soccer field in. And I use soccer as an example, it's just very visual. But we're just, Holman Avenue becomes a CMC campus. Now, I guess that's a bad example now. Holman Avenue becomes something else, a new middle school. Like, we're fresh out of soccer fields and lacrosse fields. Like, so I'm just trying to plan for an inevitable future.
Let me interject just for a second too, because I've been around long enough for the original incarnation of these discussions. And when we were talking with Parks and Rec staff about the needs for future parks, this area in general was identified as one of those due to the large parcel size of this particular property as well as the adjoining property. And through the discussions, Diesel, has indicated that the existing population plus the anticipated population of this area would require a certain amount of open space to really service that population this side of town. I'll point out that this particular lot is 1/4 the size of the lot immediately to the west. So it's certainly been looked at really in a holistic sort of way for the potential dedication of open space. And that's been factored into these conversations for quite some time. And that's been passed along, to be fair, that's been passed along to the property owners to the west who are not in the city currently, but in discussions at this point.
And I don't think that large, open green grass fields are appropriate everywhere. I don't think they're barely appropriate, but it's a lot of what our community wants and needs right now. I do think that smart development with pocket parks are good. We just need to get better at managing and taking care of things like that before we can go about accepting it. I just, to echo what Bill said, this is the spot. And it's a little, we're just running out of opportunity.
As part of the new code update, will you be suggesting that the fee schedule be changed, updated?
I mean,
amended?
we did.
Yeah.
That's new. That $5,000 is new this year. It was significant, not significantly less, but when we went and looked at, I mean, we sat and did the value of a lot of land in the city of Salida and worked the math as best we could, and landed at $5,000.
So it's current up as far as you're concerned? That was, I think, a question somebody asked if it was established.
It's not,
It's current, it's not reflective of the actual land costs.
That's what I was
But
asking.
we're also been dealing with significant affordability issues. And so the fee schedule takes a more graduated approach to that. It almost doubled the fee. It's certainly, if it was reflective of actual land values, it would probably be twice as much.
That was my
Mr.
question.
Chairman, point of order, can we get back to the subject?
Please.
Yeah, just about, yeah. So,
I mean,
I-
maybe we need a work session on this subject, but it is not
Not
what we
attached
should
to
be
it.
spending our time on right now.
correct.
Thank you, Gil.
Any other questions?
Might be another one in a bit, but yeah, as for now, thank you. Okay, where were we? So if there's no other questions for staff, then we will move on to the applicant.
Thank you. That's a little hard to follow, I have to admit. I was not anticipating that. And I do think that there's a big conversation to be had in your community about open space, types of open space, how to deal with it. My name's Ronnie Pelucio. I know I was introduced earlier, but I am the owner of Pelona Architects and Urbanists. And we have a team of people here, including Honore Miller from our office. She's the lead planner at our company that's helping manage this. We're here representing the Harder Dieslin Group, and we've collaborated with the Crabtree Group on civil engineering. And Evan Brady will be our landscape architect on this. So we've got a pretty robust team. I kind of want to talk about, or give my presentation in kind of three sections. One is, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the topics that came up at concept review that we couldn't dig into, predominantly affordable housing and density. And I'll try to keep that short, but I do think it's important. Then I want to show you the project we want to build and spend as much time as you'd like looking at that 3D model that we showed last time that I think gives us all the best visual representation of what the neighborhood might look like. And then lastly, I'd like to come back to the specific request, which is why is this a PD? And what are those standards that we're requesting to be changed? And Judy, I think you had a wonderful question. It's like, what does the minimum mean? And I have a thought about that. You know, we practice in a lot of communities, and I think there's more really wonderful language in your code that followed that statement that talks about what a minimum is supposed to do. And so I'll hopefully share my thoughts on that. And I guess before I move too far along, I really want to compliment staff. In particular, Christy has been an excellent civil servant for you. She has been transparent, she's been consistent. I think she's done a good job synthesizing some material that is complex. And she's been a pleasure to work with. We work in a lot of communities, and you don't always get that. And you don't always hear the intent behind what a local government is trying to do. And we've heard that from her. And in fact, you're hearing some of that from Diesel tonight, which is more of the intent. And, you know, we embrace that because, you know, we want to do good things. And we want to make sure you're meeting your city's goals. So this is going to hop around a little. And since it's hard for me to see that screen, I might also look to my left here and do the microphone thing. Let me know if I'm not speaking into this thing. Okay. So at the concept review, 2 topics that came up were affordable housing and density. And I'm going to keep this really brief. If there are more questions about it at the end, I'm definitely up to talk about them. The affordable housing piece, just to recap, the applicant provided deed-restricted housing at the Confluent property in abundance of what that property actually required by your code. There was an ordinance that was the outcome of that talks about the relationship between our site, which is in the upper left-hand corner, your community, and the Confluent Park site in the southeast area of the city. And that relationship allowed for, via previous agreements with your community, the developer to use some of the extra affordable housing components to give credit to this site. So much so that they can't actually use it all. So they've exceeded it for both sites so much that they can't even use the totality of the credit. So I want to make that point. That's something that was agreed upon in 2020, I believe. Now the density piece. The density for this property, we're not asking for increased density, just to recap. That's not a request here. We're actually asking for dimensional standard changes. And I'll tell you why that's wonderful. But the density thing here, how do you calculate density on the site is based on the overall square footage of the property in the zone district. And you get a number. It's a really straight mathematical equation. And in the end, the Angel View property can have 246 units on it. We're building 115 units on it. And you can debate, is that good? Should we be putting more units on it? Are we not doing something right? Or is this the right number? We think that this is the right number, and I'll show you why. So just to say again, affordable housing, we believe it's been satisfied. It's actually codified in an ordinance that the community agreed on. And then density, we're not asking for more. We're actually providing something very different in the form of what we think is the biggest community benefit that you can ask a developer, which is to create a quality environment. And there's multiple objectives. I know if you go talk to somebody that is interested in open space, they're gonna talk about open space. If you're interested in talking about the most efficient way to run sewer down the street, you're gonna get your public works department and they're gonna tell you why it's wrong. But there are many objectives at play and many parties to balance to make a quality environment. And we think this is one of those. We're proud of it. So the image on the left is not our proposal. It is a Google image search for apartment project. And we wanted to show this to you, not as a threat, because we don't want to do this, but just to show you what it means to maximize the density in an R3 zone district, which is achievable on this site. And this is one of a million that just comes up as images. They're all pretty similar. And what you see here are many large buildings and a lot of parking. There's really no connectivity in this neighborhood, and there's no valuable outdoor space. If you look closely, the areas that are green are labeled open space. They're fractured, they're adjacent to parking lots, and they're not really usable. They qualify, but it's not really a wonderful environment. And when you do this at scale, this isn't a question about whether or not an apartment is good. It's just when you do it at scale at a neighborhood of this size, which is allowable, you get a really poor physical environment. And so the community benefit is striking the balance of needs, meeting your comp plan's goals, which is the characterization of what a neighborhood should look like based on traditional neighborhood design, meeting your Chaffey County's Housing Authority goals, which is diversity of housing options, a stratification of users, a stratification of income levels and family demographics, and doing it in a meaningful way that is open to the general public, which we think we're doing. And so the image on the right is what we want to do. These are similar scales, by the way. And you can see our image has a lot of different colors on it. That's not just meant to make it look prettier. Those colors, it is common practice, I'm sure you've seen, represent different unit types. So the darker the color, the closer to red, the more dense it is. The lighter the color, closer to yellow, the less dense it is. We got a ton of colors, and they're all over the place. This image on the left, you don't. It's a monoculture neighborhood of apartments, and so you're not getting that diversity of users. Lastly, we do have apartments on our site, and they're in the center of the neighborhood, and they're also on the west side of the neighborhood. They're the orange, or the darkest red buildings. They're different than these apartments. These types of apartments that let you get the highest density, while valuable and needed, come with some demerit. They're less expensive to build. They do this thing with the land plan, but the guts of those buildings are also not wonderful in that they're like hotels. They have a corridor in the middle of the building, and the way you get in your front door is through a door in a hallway. And so all of the community building pieces that I think everybody cherishes about their historic downtowns, you don't get in that neighborhood because it's a double loaded corridor building apartment complex that is surrounded by parking and fractured open space. Our apartments, you can see, look a little different. They're walk-up apartments. We might at some point be in front of you and show you a double-loaded corridor apartment building in another project, but I just want to tell you, that's not this. This is a walk-up apartment. You have entrances on the ground floor. There are stairs that access just pairs of units upstairs, and it still has the opportunity to create community and quality of place. Anyway, these were super important last time we were here, and I know staff did a great job talking a little bit about this, but I thought it'd be valuable to share this with you because I genuinely believe that the public benefit isn't a one-liner. The public benefit is the totality of the neighborhood that the developer is presenting, and they provided significant in excess affordable housing on another site, which I think should be recognized. And they're not maximizing the density on this site by doing something that I think would be a lesser neighborhood for your community. This is the single objective neighborhood, density. This is the multifaceted objective neighborhood, which I think all of your codes talk about. And I believe in, by the way. This is what we do. We do those. We're gonna hop over to the SketchUp model. And if you have questions about that, you could come back to it. So we have this model. I showed it to you last time. And it just gives a little bit better sense, I think, to everybody about what the neighborhood might look like. And so I do have to do some pointing here. So I'm gonna walk over here, it's in my nature to do this. And I'm gonna point at the bottom of the screen for others that are in the audience. And you can kind of see, and you know this, you live here. Chaffee County Road is at the bottom of the screen. The Angel View 1, which is already developed, is to the north, and above that is County Road 140. I just want to point out that some of the public improvements that you heard that are part of the project, and you're going to see in the 2 dimensions later, I just want to point them out here, are a multi-use path along County Road 120, a multi-use path along Tenderfoot Road that connects to a future development, and a multi-use path along Shepherd Road that connects through this project and provides improvements that aren't shown on this that continue through the neighboring property to extend that multi-use path through existing development. And when you look at the phasing plan, it actually shows up in there. That's part of that second phase. That'll all be, one continuous public improvement that's part of streets. That connectivity, I think, kind of falls short sometimes when you just look at it and plan. It's going to be hard to see as I fly around, but I'll point it out, and it is important because it connects some of the greater public spaces in your community to the west and to the east and to the north, and just provides general access. And, one of the things I think Diesel would support is, how that in general is a healthier environment. Somebody's gonna get on a bike to go somewhere. Perhaps an open space that you have or a new one that's downstream. Okay, So this thing's going to start moving around a little bit. You can see the sizes and shapes of those open spaces. The model takes a moment to render, but you can see the general character and disposition of the community. There are 2 entrances that are proposed along County Road 120, one at the west and one at the east. The one at the east happens to be the lowest site, the lowest corner of the site, and so those 2 areas of land will be the areas where we predominantly hold detention. As you know, water isn't always present. And so our intention is to work with our landscape architect to make sure that the excessive area of those detention zones is actually usable when there's not water in it. It's super important to point out that the single family homes, the duplexes, and the townhomes all have backyards. I hope people bring their dogs back there. I hope people don't let their dogs poop in the detention pond. There is a ton of outdoor space that we don't talk about, and it's part of the land plan, and it's in the lots. And part of our request about lot size changes, Judy, relates to that. It's like, how do you make usable lot space? Because you got some old stuff in your code from the 1960s that we're just not doing anymore. We got to go back to the 1900s to build a quality community and undo the stuff that we did in the 60s. And your community is doing that with their updates. So we're looking forward to that code coming down the line. And then as you come down here, I want to point out that the alley system is a shared alley. It's, you know, we're using an existing alley, we're improving it, but it's shared with the neighbors to the north. And then mid-block connections, well, you know, they don't qualify for open space, super important. We want people to walk through this community. And those mid-block connections already exist in Angel View 1 to the north. You'll be able to walk from this neighborhood through the north neighborhood to the school bus, because the school bus picks up on County Road 140. And we want kids and anybody to be able to do that. There's plenty to talk about here, and you know, we can come back to these things, but in the center of the neighborhood is another park. And I think that this park is very important. As you can see, have our largest buildings, which aren't as large as the buildings that we could do, but they're still the buildings that we have that are largest ones around that park. You've heard me say this, but oftentimes apartment units have no private outdoor amenities. Ours will have porches, and I'm going to come back to that too, but they also have the greatest immediate access to the largest common outdoor amenity. And that's a benefit for that user to be able to go somewhere that's not their private land. They don't have that, but they can go to this public park. We have one in the middle of the neighborhood. It's also good for the neighbors, because we want people in those parks. You want those to be used. You want people to encounter each other in these public spaces, to get to know their neighbors, and all the wonderful community things happen in those public spaces. You can also see the largest park that we've talked about at length in the foreground here now at the west side of the site. And you heard me say this last time, but this is larger than 60% of a National Football League football field. I'm not saying that you don't need soccer fields. I'm not saying that this is a football field, but just to give you the scale, this thing is large. And counterpoint, in my opinion, neighborhood parks aren't the place to put soccer fields. It's just a total conflict of users. What comes with soccer fields are immense need for parking, and you need the land area to do that. It typically does not happen it's not successful when you put it next to residential of density that your R3 zone district allows. There's a better place, I'm sure, to do something like that. And I do hope to talk to to Diesel about this a little bit, just as we continue to work in your community. Where do you get these things? And how can we help work on that with you? Wherever there are apartments in this community, you can see in the foreground here on the left, there are some. The parking is concealed. So those issues you saw in the land plan we showed earlier, which is parking is everywhere, it's on all sides of buildings, that's not the case. Parking's at the back of buildings and it's hidden. And so on that note, this is an alley-loaded community. Garages are at the rear. Homes have fronts with front doors and front porches. Lots are narrow. And then the public environment of the streets is a public amenity. It's a good place to be. You're not going to throw a football in the street, but it is a wonderful place to be because it's appointed with all of the things that come with good street design, which are sidewalks, detached tree lawns, right? Detached sidewalks, tree lawns, on-street parking, and then a mirror of that. And when you have all of those things, what you get are streets that are slow, pedestrians are prioritized, there's a microclimate of tree canopy shade right in the place where you need it, which is where you have a heat island effect of asphalt. And it creates those tree-lined streets that you love and think of that you have in your town and then you see in communities across the nation, predominantly historic communities. What do the buildings look like? There's some stuff that we have that are going to be notes in the plat that talk about the architectural design. These buildings, we are working with the applicant to design these. These are real buildings. So wherever you see a duplex or a townhouse or an apartment, we have construction documents in the works for those. We're hoping to get those approved. They will meet all of the current code related to environmental efficiency, et cetera. But you can see the general character of our proposed neighborhood really leans into the traditional pitched roofs of the 1900 historic communities, which I think your comp plan references. And then in addition to that, it has a little bit of the modernism with, you know, for those that geek out on this, like asymmetrical windows, change in materials. And then occasionally 1 out of 5, we're saying you can do something that is more representative of the eclectic nature of Salida, which is the monopitch roof. So you can't do it everywhere, but 1 out of 5 you can do it. So we're trying to balance it because we recognize that it's not loved and in abundance, it's actually pretty monotonous. And so we have regulations that you have in your code and then some additional language that we're promoting to really make that work well for this neighborhood. And so just going down the street, you can see how these things might look at eye level, including the entrance on the east side of the property and homes that face onto these open spaces or detention ponds in this case. And then just the overall character of what it's like when you enter into the community, how cars can act as buffers, how the tree-lined street might behave, how the bump outs in the road that the Public Works Department talked about work. They actually remove a parking stall on either side, and they get the pedestrian closer to the other side of the street, so they're not walking across as much asphalt. They're the priority, it's not the car. We've got a ton of parking on this site. Every home accommodates the parking that's required on its property, and where there are ADUs, there's an additional parking stall. While not required in your code, we want to do that. And then when you look back to the largest space that's central to the development, you can see that it is a meaningful sized space. I'm just going to flip back to that. And that it is large enough to sit among those buildings and be a place for people to recreate. It's not the primary point of recreation. That's the large park on the west side of the property. You can see those bulb outs. There are bulb outs at the corners of the neighborhood, which were not brought up by Public Works. I think that you guys are used to those, which is wonderful because you want to slow traffic down at intersections. On the right-hand side is one of the multi-use paths. On the left-hand side, here's another bulb out and a crossing that gets you to that major park. And then I just want to stop and stall on this for 1 second. So that building on the left, it's kind of important. It's tough to capture it, but it's alley loaded, it's a duplex. And as you move up to it, you can see this one's unique. Not everyone's like this, but this has the house attached to the garage. And this is one of the reasons why we want to change the bulk regulations. Not the bulk regulations, dimensional standards through the PD. And that is because on compact lots, it's hard to provide main level living. And part of the plan for the neighborhood is to give the development the opportunity to have main level living in duplexes and townhomes that include bedrooms, because we want people to be able to age in place in this neighborhood, and you need a bedroom to do that. And so you can have the accessibility piece, while it's not a complete accessibility necessarily that comes with all of the hardware in a bathroom. Those changes can come in the future, and you can have main level living today. Not just in the apartments, which will meet the ADA requirements by building code, but you'll have them here. And so part of our request for the lot size change is because of that. It's about lot coverage, and I'll show you that at the end when I circle back to the, how you make a neighborhood like this. So we are proud of this. We're hoping to talk to you a little bit more about the 3D toward the end, but I was hoping that Honore could come up and speak to the 2D images that are part of the packet, which will conclude this piece, and then I'll tell you quickly about the bulk regulations. So I don't know if, Catherine, can you flip back over to the PowerPoint for a sec?
All right, yeah. So I know Ronnie, kind of went over some of this, and these are just 2D plans of what we just kind of walked through in 3D, but I think sometimes it helps to kind of visualize it. Here, we talked about this earlier, but these colors are representing the different building types, right? And the range of building types that we're offering. Ronnie pointed out, right, that these kind of blue colored buildings are optional ADUs where we've incorporated them into the lot dimensions and incorporated those additional parking spots into the lots. And here, this matrix on the right, I think that's just important to point out because as we talked about, these are real buildings that we're advancing. And so not only are we offering this kind of range of building types, but also this range of building amenities. So within each of these different building types, we're offering different, like a gradation of amenities in terms of bedrooms, bathrooms, the option for ADUs, the option for main level living. So you really kind of have this range of building types, and then within each of these building types, we're offering a range of amenities specifically. Do you have the?
Yeah, I'll show you how this works. I learned of this earlier, so I'll do this thing.
Okay, you got it. All right. So I know I just mentioned ADUs, and I think it's important to point out also how we're offering diversity in this neighborhood through both ownership and rental opportunities. And so we have these ADU options on the lots, which you can kind of see in this middle purple pink color. And ADUs not only offer like the lot owners to be able to rent out the property, a dual income, additional rental opportunities for residents, but also the opportunity to have multi-generational living, right? Like in-laws living on your own lot. The opportunity to have like a home office, right, on your own lot. And yeah, also just that kind of dual income opportunity. And so I think, in addition to the building types, there's really kind of this gradation of options for ownership and rental opportunities that are really important to point out. And then here's this open space exhibit that I think we kind of tried to zoom in on earlier, but we just kind of wanted to bring this up again. And again, I think the key point here is these different colors really represent the range of open space amenities and recreation opportunities. So we have this largest public park on the western side, and then we also have these kind of intermittent pocket parks throughout the neighborhood, and they're all connected by this system of sidewalks, which you can see in blue here, connecting these different open spaces throughout the site. In addition, we have these yellow mid-block connections which just kind of further prioritize pedestrians and allow you to move efficiently through the neighborhood and connect kind of this range of open spaces. And, while I think this park on the western side is what's kind of technically counted toward that like open space requirement in the PD, I do think, it's worth noting there are all these additional smaller pocket parks and trail connections and mid-block pedestrian connections that do total toward close to 2 acres kind of in totality. So we're really looking at how we are providing, diversity in this neighborhood through building types, through building amenities, through ownership and rental opportunities, through different recreation and open space opportunities. And so I think really just kind of, as Ronnie said, looking at the overall neighborhood and how we're trying to balance all of these different factors in a comprehensive neighborhood.
Thanks, Honore. Okay, so the last piece here, thanks for being patient with us. But there's a lot, and the last piece is how do you do it? And why is it a PD? And what does it mean? What are we actually asking for here? So we're not asking for additional density. What we are actually asking for are some modifications to the dimensional standards. And while it won't be part of the PD, because we want to simplify the confusion and not create confusion, on this chart, what you see in yellow is existing R3. In green, what you see are the items that are part of our comparison chart that relate to inclusionary housing standards. And these dimensional standards that you get with inclusionary housing are less than your R3. You have that in your code right now. You do this. You build these, and so you're familiar with it. And then what's our comparison, on the right, and what does it mean? So let me just say the first orange one at the top and the second orange one relate to the sizes of lots. And so what we're saying are smaller lots are good. We want smaller lots. How small? Well, we're not asking for extremely small lots. We're asking for lots that you already are familiar with here that relate to inclusionary housing sizes. And that allows us to get compact homes that, while not achieving the capital A affordable requirement, provide a type of affordability. And they give you that diversity in the plan that we're looking for. And so you know what those are. You've seen them. The second one, density, we're not asking for additional density. We have that covered, so that is the same. Now, this is important, maximum lot coverage and minimum landscape area. Why are we asking for changes in those two departments? It relates to our ability to provide those main level primary living opportunities. And so let me just point out what they are, because then I'm going to ask to zoom out. Your R3 says 45%. If you could actually scroll to the left, because they don't have it memorized. Maximum lot coverage, and then minimum landscape. So maximum lot coverage of 45 is the standard. We're asking for 55%, more lot coverage. The minimum landscape area is 30. We're asking for 25. So we're asking for less landscape area and more lot coverage. And so if you pan to the right, what you see here is an image of that building that I pointed out, where there is a garage and a home is attached to the garage. Everything that you see there is allowed under or without a request for a modification about the lot coverage components, except for the red stuff. And what you see there is a unit 1 and unit 2. That's a duplex unit. The left-hand side, obviously there's red things. The right-hand side, there is not. The orange stuff is porches. The yellow stuff is building footprint. Your code is written that porches count towards your lot coverage. And so the problem with that is a builder typically wants to sell the thing that they are going to get the most profit from, which is habitable conditioned square footage. How big is your house? 1,500 square feet, and I have a 100-foot square porch. Nobody talks about the porch. But when the porch is part of the lot coverage calculation, it disincentivizes the builder to build the porch because they want to maximize their lot coverage and maximize their revenue. In particular, in a case like this, where we know some homeowner might want main level living, we want them to be able to do it, which they can with your code, and we want them to build the porch. Because the porch is the thing that lets you meet your neighbors and it lets you have all the wonderful things about historic communities that we've talked about. And so in this case, the red stuff really is the stuff that we would be getting and we want to do with that extra square footage. So much so that if you scroll down and look at this thing at the left, staff didn't talk about this, and then if we could see the full architectural design thing, so much so that there's another thing here, actually, Christy, which we should probably, if you go back up, it's the orange stuff at the bottom that's so much so that one of the controlling architectural design factors is our commitment to building the porches. So we're asking for the regulation that says, hey, let us cover the lot a little bit more, and we promise you that we're going to build porches. And this is the promise here. All homes, yada, 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 will have a minimum of 75 square foot porch that faces the public street. And so we're not trying to dupe anybody. We're actually putting that in, that wasn't requested of us, but just for transparency's sake, we're looking to be consistent with our purpose here, which is to create a good place. And so those are the requests. Oh, one last thing, the 12-foot front yard setback. Why is that important? Because we want to get buildings close to the sidewalk. We don't want to waste our space by having front yards. You actually want to make the backyard space. You want buildings close to the sidewalk. So that you have more of a traditional neighborhood design, again, where homes have semi-public front porches that face sidewalks. People on a sidewalk can say hi to someone sitting on their porch, and you get to know your neighbors. It creates safety, it creates community. So we want to really put things on the lots in the right locations, and that's why we're asking for these modifications.
Really quick, can I ask you a question on the porches?
Yeah.
You're showing the porches at 12 feet, right?
Every home, including the apartments, has a different sized porch. So I couldn't tell you.
You mean the setback, right?
The front, yeah, the front setback, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were talking about a 12-foot wide porch.
No.
We like to make big porches. So yeah, we're getting porches close to the sidewalk, and they're 12 feet. And so just going back to this, this is what we'd like to do. Here's an image of it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions right off the bat for
have a
the
question.
applicant? Yeah, Dan?
I have a question about the multi-use path. Like, what does that look like in practice? Because you have sidewalks everywhere, and then you have a path also, I think, in addition to a sidewalk along the two main.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I'm not moving that mouse, am I? No. So, basically, it's a wider sidewalk. And I believe they're 8-foot wide sidewalks in those specific locations. And, those are called multi-use paths. Basically, you can get multiple things occurring on it and multiple people passing each other, including putting a bike on it.
So it's an enhanced sidewalk, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
No, I don't think sidewalks would take that in any negative way.
Just a comment. I mean, the multi-use path along Chaffey County Route 120 currently exists and has existed before the existence of this development.
Yeah, so we're making the improvement to it so that it is this detached multi-use path with a tree lawn along the length of it. So it'll be like this, but you're right, there currently is a bike path there, but part of the plan is that the development team is going to make the official improvement to it so that the character of it is like this.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Okay, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this might be for staff. There was a comment in there, someone didn't think we needed all the mid-block connections.
The Public Works Director.
So who's that up to? I guess I think you guys are, and I'm referring to the developer.
He's requesting there only be one mid-block connection. And that was in his report, his agency review report.
But I think you guys would say that you value more than
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of confusion of terms. So let me just, for a quick second, Public Works isn't saying no mid-block connections. They're not saying do one mid-block connection. There's two things here. Bulb outs and mid-block connections. Public Works is talking about how the mid-block connections create bulb outs in the road. So let me just say, the mid-block connections, and sorry to the audience, are these things, right? You can walk through, from this park, through those buildings, between homes, managed by, that thing is managed by the HOA, it's just a tree and sidewalk to another park. They happen there, they happen there, they happen there, and they happen here. So you can really get to things. It's a permeable neighborhood. I think everybody loves that. So what we're hearing from the Public Works Department, which I haven't spoken with David Lacey yet, but I would like to. He's saying this. You see where we have
remove the bulb
parks
outs
in the middle, and then we have bulb outs where we remove parking, and we're showing it in multiple locations, primarily where there's a mid-block connection that allows for a pedestrian to walk out closer to the other side of the sidewalk that's across the street. The benefit of that is no, this is about people. It's not about cars. I don't have to navigate between parked cars. I don't have to worry about a car trying to park or zoom by. I'm actually closer to that thing that I need to get to. So that's a pretty common practice. And again, your community does allow that at the street corners, which is wonderful. Putting them in the middle of long blocks is also valuable. What we're saying is put them at the key places. Have one here on the left-hand side of the image that connects to the major park right in the middle. Let people get to that through the heart of the neighborhood. And then the other park in the middle of the neighborhood, we said there's two. They relate to the edges of the park where you might enter. And then lastly, on the east side, over by the detention areas, that's another common place to want to cross because the mid-block connection behind that bulb goes through Angel View 1 on the north side. So people will be walking there. We're just saying, yeah, now you also are prioritized to cross here because you're going to want to go to the multi-use
So
path.
I guess my question is Public Works providing an opinion? I mean, I tend to like the more bulb outs approach.
Well, it's his request that there only be one per section. The other concern he had was with snow plows.
I get that,
Yeah.
but I guess are we designing our neighborhood for snowplows or people? And,
Yeah.
but that's like just an opinion.
And there'll be so many cars parked on the street
And we could,
that snow plows aren't gonna
Yeah.
be really impacted by those bump outs anyway.
So, to Dan's point, one of the conditions is to meet all the civil requirements, including Public Works. Where does that, are they in
that's part
conflict?
of that.
So how do you, I mean, I'm a little bit still confused as to what the difference is and how it affects the
You could say that they
development.
would meet all of the requirements, but are allowed to do the bulb outs or whatever. But then when it goes to council, David may have comments on that and say, this is the reasoning why I don't want those bulbs.
Okay.
So it's essentially TBD, and we can provide a recommendation.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're still in questions for applicant. Anybody? Are we done? We can come back to it, but I think maybe we should get to the public that is eagerly awaiting some comment time. So with that, we will do that. Move to public input.
And we need them to sign in on that.
Okay, so if you're coming up, we need you to sign in up here. So if there's anybody signed in, they kind of get to go first, but I don't think anybody did. So come on up.
You want to have them sign up advance or as they come, they're signing all these.
Yeah, we could maybe bring, yeah, I think Bill's going to do that.
Yeah.
The camera needs to be moved up a little, because it cuts off that.
Bill's going to come out. Does anybody want to sign up? Anybody want to speak? Just raise your hand and Bill kind of bring it to you so you can sign in. We can streamline.
State your name.
Okay.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this planned development. I would like to request the council honor the required minimums that are put in the city code. I think Salida is a pretty incredible place. I think we all think that. And I'm excited that other people are getting to move here and live here, but I want to make sure that we keep the city code and the minimum requirements that are in there. So when we grow responsibly, we grow in a sustainable way, we grow in a way that, that, helps to keep the character of our town and really just keep it a quality place. So the Salida's comprehensive plan was mentioned in the speech regarding some of this architecture here. Now, part of that comprehensive plan is that it mirrors the patterns of the neighboring community, the neighboring houses, compatible housing types. And, when I look at this development in the plan, and I appreciate the 3D view, I think we all enjoyed seeing that. But as I consider the house to the west down here, And I consider the houses in Meadowlark, and I consider some of the houses on the other side of 140. I'm just asking, where does it need to mirror, could be compatible with existing housing, and where this development goes now? So I have a single-family ranch on the southwestern side of this development, and now I have a parking lot coming into my children's window as this is drawn. And that's just not compatible. I think those developments should be in areas, but that's not compatible with where we live. Again, I'm referencing Salida's comprehensive plan on page 50. That's an important piece because that was spoken about, and that is a concern of mine. There was also talk about a lot of dual income, and I believe there will be a lot of dual income earners in this property, in this development. So I don't suspect there'll be, less than one car per unit. I do hope people get on their bikes and ride bikes. I would love to ride bikes with these folks. But there's going to be a lot of cars. I'm not sure the traffic analysis was sufficient to necessarily in the way it was presented to really be taken seriously by city council. And I think that needs to kind of really be thought about and really dive into what the traffic impact and what those numbers are based on the idea that we're going to be a lot of dual earners and probably everybody's going to have at least one car in these 115 units. Maybe they have more than one car. So those are some considerations. As for the parks, a fee in lieu of can kind of go so far, and I appreciate the developer's commitment to the walkways into the little tree areas. But this park, where it's placed right now on this map, on the, what would this be, the western side?
I'm going to ask you to kind of, we're out on a 3-minute time limit, and we want to hear you out on the last point.
I appreciate that, and I thank you for letting me finish on this point. There was a lot of rhetoric in your in the presentation that was set before you from the architect that we could have moved through a lot quicker and could have had the same points and didn't have to be so polished and waxed, but we could have just got through the same message and had this conversation a little further. But thank you for letting me have my remaining time. I would like to propose that this park get placed adjacent to County Road 120 so the public can access it from County Road 120 and from Shepherd Drive. I don't think it's appropriate, forgive me if I'm out of bounds, to speculate on expanding that park to the west on the premise that a landowner is going to sell that land to the city, that the city's even going to annex that land, and that this developer is going to be able to buy it. I don't think that's the appropriate goal. I would like to request there be some consideration of juxtaposing the current location of the park and that apartment complex so that it goes up and it abuts to the other apartment complex. And I have some open space between my yard and where the parking lot for the apartment complex is right now. And there's no demarcation there. That's open space where people can be with their dogs and cigarettes and all kinds of other things that aren't just compatible with the neighborhood and the legacy of that area. And I really would appreciate City Council taking these matters to heart. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, could I please request that when someone speaks, they first state their name and where they live? Because we're not always seeing the list. We don't know who's talking.
I think we've eliminated the where you live address as of now, but a name would be great.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Anna Bishop, and that was my husband, Brian Bishop. And we both live in a house which is going to be pretty well swallowed by this neighborhood. So because of that, it's in our interest that this neighborhood be the best it can possibly be, since these are going to be our new neighbors. I think that in the very long presentation that you guys had, there was a lot of emphasis from the developers on all the things they're doing right, and that's great. I appreciate that. But we have to go back to what they're asking for with the variances is to go below the minimum standards for a community. And I just feel that it's important that we advocate for our new neighbors who aren't here to advocate for themselves. I think it's really interesting that they're going to create a microclimate of tree canopy with less than the minimum landscaping. And so I think we need to take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. I think it's important for the city to hold the developers to standards that enhance the livability of this neighborhood for not only the people who live in it, but the people who live around it. I think it's kind of a long shot about the whole park expansion thing. I think that's taking a lot of liberty with just making assumptions. And I echo my husband Brian in that I think it would be really nice for the park to face County Road 120. Right now it's really hidden behind all the apartments and parking lots. And the average person in Salida driving down the road or riding on the bike paths is not even gonna know it's there. And so I think if it's a city park and it's paid for with city taxes and it's maintained by the city, it would be really nice for it to be more accessible to the general public who's using the bike path. And right now it's basically offsetting the lack of green space that the developers are putting in. And it's kind of a private park for that neighborhood. It's functioning that way. And so I think that that's something you should take into consideration. As far as the variances go, I think that minimum standards should be met and that this should be a neighborhood that can be reflective of the standards of the city and not something that's just going to maximize the developer's profits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Holly Grady.
I'm Holly Grady, and I live at 2119 Emma Lane, just to the north of the pictorial here, the condominiums that were built and are presently there. I am just coming to you with some questions that I've gleaned from what I've learned tonight. The one issue I'm having with the density, same as what I've heard before, I think the minimum standards should be adhered to and respected. The code is there for a reason. As you know, the condominiums that were built there have zero green space. However, if you look at the entirety of the whole Angel View development, they're included, and probably 45 to 50% of the current development has no green space. It's all condensed below Tenderfoot Road. So the upper portion on the north side of Tenderfoot Road has no green space, as well as across the alley and 2 large rows of condominiums. So, I mean, it's great that there's green space, but you must understand there's very little green space here for the entire development. And same thing, I'm concerned with what they predict in some way that there might be more green space to come, which you can't guarantee that. Also, the density issue with ADUs, I would believe that would increase the density of the population living on that same development space. I don't know, the parking situation for that kind of thing. I also can't see any of this additional recreational vehicle, boat parking that was somewhat promised to the condominium owners, that would be incorporated in this plan. People move here for recreational opportunities and they have their toys. And there's very little space for those kind of things to be put out of the view, possibly, and make it more aesthetically pleasing. The porches piece, I'm not sure if I really understood, just along County Road 120, are those the porches on those structures, or is there porches where the duplexes are being built at the upper northern side? So I'm just wondering what the aesthetics of the other structures are besides just these single-family homes down here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Harry, Mary, sorry.
Yep, Mary.
Looks like a Harry.
Hi. I live down the street from Holly. I am at 1001 Emma Lane, Unit B. And one of the things that was missing in the beautiful 3D presentation with the boat in the front yard and everything is what's already built up there. And I think if that was incorporated, you could see visually what it looks like right now and the zero green space. I have lived there for 5 years and 7 months, and many of the trees have struggled to survive because they were, and I'm just going off what I was told, they were planted incorrectly, planted at the wrong time, planted by sons of, like not little kids, but teenagers, things like that. So it's not as green, what's been there for almost 6 years now. And you could take a look at that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the porches being closer to the street. My downstairs front bedroom window is 10 feet from the street. And there was a repeated drunk driver, driving drunk person who finally was caught parking, zooming in and parking right there for almost 4 years, who blew a .22. So I've been 10 feet from cars parked right there. So it's not getting to know your neighbors, it's your neighbors blowing into your first floor. Just want to explain how close that is. The other thing is that's missing in the presentation is how narrow and dense Desi Drive is that comes off 140 into the unit south. It's only kind of one lane. There's only parking allowed or available on one side, and it gets kind of iffy getting out of there, and it's where the mailbox is for our 66 units. So if you want to see how dense it is, come on over and you'll see how dense that is. And that included where my unit is. It's only parking is only allowed on one side because the cars won't fit there. So I often wonder, there's no parking on both sides. I also wonder sometimes how emergency vehicles will get in parts of the community that's there now. Finally, I just wanted to ask if we could please control the dust. 5 years and 7 months of just dust and rumbling, and it's pretty simple. Just put up a sign, no construction traffic. We've asked for it, we've talked about it, and however long this is going to take, it's going to be miserable. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mary. Jim Sanders?
Yeah, my name is Jim Sanders. I live at 7618 County Road 120. So it's directly across the street from the southwest corner of the development. I believe I've still been trying to figure out exactly where this street will come through. But I believe my property's right here. I'm hoping it's not right here. And I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment, and thank you for this meeting. My comments aren't as well thought out and researched as Brian's, who's my neighbor across the street, but I do support a lot of what he says, including his suggestion, and I'm not a developer or designer. You guys have already figured out probably the ideal placement for everything, but the idea of moving that park adjacent to County Road 120 certainly would be to my advantage and makes sense to me as a property owner in that area, because there are going to be units right across the street. That's going to impact my views and my feeling of being, having buildings right across the street. I know that's inevitable, but if that works in your plan, I think Brian's suggestion was great. I really appreciate the fact that the density that you are suggesting and proposing is much lower than what's allowed for the area. At the same time, I'm just concerned, that's a lot of density. That's a lot of buildings. We've already seen the impact of the development of the first phase of Angel View on the other side. And I don't know the numbers, but just looking at, this is 4 times the amount of units and people, perhaps, of what's over there on the other side. And so I'm concerned about that, but it's zoned for it, so I can't do anything about it. ADUs, of course, will increase. I don't know if that's factored into the density of the potential of that, the people that live in the ADUs, but of course, that's going to increase the density, and I don't know if that's included in the calculations. And finally, I'm really concerned about the impact of the traffic. If in some of the calculations and the concept of this development, if you were thinking 1 car per unit, that's, of course, is a fantasy. This is America, this is Colorado, and there's going to be a lot of vehicles there, and that's really going to impact County Road 120. That's, I'm guessing, is going to be the primary place where they're going to exit and enter. And there's already been an increase. I've only owned my property for 5 years, and to see the traffic that comes on County Road 120, it's been increasing, and a lot of it's construction traffic, but it's just a concern of mine. I know all this stuff is well within your rights and the way things are zoned, but you live right there, you can see what's going on. So thank you for letting me express those concerns, and good luck. I appreciate it if you guys keep working in the direction you are.
Thanks, Jim. All right, Lisa Runkle.
Hi, I'm Lisa Runkle. I live in one of the condo units on the north side of this development. Can we go to page 46 in the packet, please? I just want to provide some context. I think this was already pointed out earlier, or actually I don't think this point was. I have a concern with what we're referring to as the alleyway, which if I'm looking at the map right, I believe is 12.5 feet. Is that correct? So this right here, this access easement, am I looking at that correctly? It's 12.5 feet wide. Right here.
There says 20.
12.5 is 25. Okay. Well, I did some measuring today, and per the point earlier about many of us having toys in our garages, I just want to point out at 25 feet, there will be 55, I think, garages that line up back to back between the old development and the new development. And our Toyota Tundra, just as an example, is 19 feet long. So just thinking about, pulling a trailer, or if you have a Sprinter van or any of those things, it just feels really tight I felt really tight at 12.5. It still feels a little tight at 25 feet. And I just think about, 55 garage accesses going down that lane and trying to get to garages. I'm a survivor of the Marshall Fire in Superior. And if you followed any of that, the emergency evacuation was a nightmare. And just looking at all of this is just giving me anxiety in terms of 115 units in an emergency and how many access or exit points folks have. Same point, if you can zoom out on this on the open space. I think someone made this earlier, but just pointing out that I think we're taking into account, or we're not taking into account the 5.46 or whatever this is, acres in this first phase of development that will also be sharing that same amount of open space. So that's somewhere around 180 units sharing 1.19 acres of open space. And someone brought this up earlier, but I think the point about multi-use trails is, I think we're talking about wide sidewalks. So it feels like we're maybe counting that into the open space equation too. And I just want to make sure, someone made the point earlier, if you drive through the first phase of this development, you'll see that there's not multi-use trails, there's just sidewalks. It's concrete and it's sidewalks. And then same concern on the traffic, although I don't think anyone's pointed out on County Road 120 and 140, as those vehicles are coming in from the west, they're coming in at a minimum of 45 miles an hour. I think the sign's posted at 35, but I can just tell you anecdotally, walking both the sidewalk on 140 and the trail on 120, that those vehicles are flying in, and it's just a traffic and safety concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have online requests?
Yes, we have Jerry Rasky has his hand up. Jerry, do you want to speak? We may have to unmute him. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. My name's Jerry Rasky, and I live in Salida, Colorado. And I just want to echo what people are saying about the concerns about traffic. I know that CDOT would require right-hand turn lanes if the number of right-hand turns during rush hour exceed 25. And it sounds like from the updated traffic analysis plan, that's what's going to happen. So I just don't want to see County Road 120 turn into an accident hotspot. Second, once Tenderfoot Trail and Shepherd Drive are open, then the traffic from Emma Road, Emma Lane, and Desi Drive will also spill onto County Road 120. And that's not accounted for in the traffic analysis report. Third, the report contains no actual traffic data. How much traffic is going down 120? Will the new development increase traffic by 10 times, 20 times? The traffic analysis report should indicate this. So I ask you to consider the traffic wisely and have the engineers look at the traffic report again and include the traffic from the first development on Emma Lane and Desi Drive, and also include some real data as to what the traffic is now on County Road 120. So thank you. Let's not turn 120 into an accident hotspot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Oh,
Guys looking?
there is.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't unmute him.
Oh, he's self-muted. Brian
Okay.
or Bradley?
Bradley, would you like to speak? You're self-muted. Bradley?
Up to you if you want to try to come back to.
Yeah, we can come back if you guys
If
can
he decides.
connect. Is there anyone else? That's it? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close public unless you get Bradley back. So we'll go ahead and do that and move on to discussion. Lot to digest.
Right.
I think Gif's got a question.
Oh, yeah.
Well, on discussion, I mean, there's been a lot of talk in comments about density, and please, staff, correct me if I'm wrong. The developer could build by right more units than are being proposed.
Yes,
By quite a bit.
246.
So-
246 units.
Yeah, 246 units. So we could sit here and say, we're not going to agree to any of these deviations. And I think the medicine would be worse than the disease in that case, because I think what the developers would likely do is say, okay, fine, maybe we'll build some more Angel View.
Right.
And Angel View 1 and 2. And this, to me anyway, is more appealing than that.
I agree.
Brian?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Gif. And I think for the future, the open space issue bugs me a lot because, Unfortunately, there is the "or" in the code right now, and the Director of Park recognizes that deficiency. It's suboptimal, but there is the option of the fee in lieu, and certainly other considerations in terms of trail access the developer has included, which is a plus for not only this development, but tying in future. I think the point about traffic is probably something that needs to be addressed a little bit more. I would like to see that traffic study beefed up a little bit more and at least have a reality check on what the current baseline is, and then what those changes may be in terms of safety. You know, whether right in, right out makes sense from the development or not. Somebody smarter than me can figure that out, but it seems like it's an area where better information would result in better decisions.
Well, you know.
I don't really know what it would change.
It might not change anything,
I mean,
but
the interior is very well designed for traffic calming.
I think you're talking about 120.
yeah, I'm not talking about
I think,
internal to the development.
and as far as like a turn lane, I think that's worse. I think, you know, with the improvements to the trail, with trees, and that sort of thing will help calm traffic. I think it's still 35 miles an hour there. Nobody goes 35 miles an hour.
Right.
But, and even, I think if you lowered it to 25, they'd still go 45. So it's only with those sort of improvements and in design only will you calm traffic. You're not going to calm traffic with signs. We could try with coming in. I agree with you that people come flying in from the west, and maybe there should be some consideration for just some design. I don't think, like I said, I don't think a sign is going to do it. It's going to have to be some traffic calming aspects.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'd like to, well, to that point, I have a few things. I have a question. I don't know if it's for the developer or for staff, but if in fact a traffic study concluded that the number of cars was increasing exponentially because of the first Angel View and this density and other planned projects, is there room, I can't really read the width of this road. Would there be room in the road to put a center lane or a left turn lane or a right turn lane or a median? I mean, is there, because I'm seeing this built right out to the road with the trail. So, you know, is there space for that if that in fact needed to be done?
I think Tracy could probably answer that.
Yeah.
He's their engineer.
So that's my first question. I'll hold the floor.
Yes, the design plans include a widening of County Road 120, making it very similar to what they did along Crestone Avenue.
Okay.
So we
Continuing that
basically
theme.
continuing that section through our property.
And that would create traffic calming because there are bump outs and medians and things along that.
We'll be providing parking, on-street parking along County Road 120.
And who is responsible for that? Is that a county project? Is that a developer project?
We are doing it.
We being?
The developer.
The developer. Okay, good. Thank you. That was the answer to my question. Thank you so much. That's good news. Okay. So I have, I just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments about the density. They're not asking for additional density. So as Giff said, you know, they could do 246 units. If you think back to the presentation of the left screen and the right screen and the big square buildings with the apartments, that's what's possible with, by right, with a lot more density and a lot less, and much less attractive. So as much as I know that it's very difficult for neighbors to imagine, you know, these kinds of changes right up next to their properties, I just want to point out that it could be a lot worse. in my opinion. I know, with all due respect, I can't remember your name, the architect. I was one of the ones who was bristling with the, lack of affordable housing. I understand, I get it, you don't have to do it. It's just still like all of these units and there's not anything deed restricted. I understand you don't have to do it. It would have been nice if that was voluntary, but it's not happening. But you said something several times that goes back to this density, and that is, you said this is what could happen. It's not a threat, but it kind of is, because, if we don't, I love this development. I love the way it looks. I said that at the conceptual meeting. I think it's beautifully designed. I think it meets, it hits a lot of points for us. But I do want people to understand that the reason that we have the original Angel View and all the problems that we have there is because, with all due respect, Walt, this developer walked away from a beautiful development that included affordable housing and did by right what they were allowed to do. So at the time, I think, Walt, you said, I'm already building these at 100% AMI. The number you gave at that time was $285,000. And those units now are selling for, what, 400, 500, 600,000? So the reason that we like deed restrictions is because it keeps things affordable in perpetuity. So I just needed to point that out. And I say that not to beat you up as much as for the benefit of the people in the audience who are saying that they don't like this, they don't want us to do this, they have issues, which I can totally understand. So the open space question, I think, is asked and answered by our Parks and Recreations. That our staff negotiated this particular amount of open space, and we asked about the fees. The fees have been updated, and they've agreed to pay that. So I don't know that there's much of anything we as a board can do. Moving, the suggestions of moving the park closer to 120, I understand why the neighbors want to do that, but looking at the design, it means there will be a big cluster of apartments on the opposite side of that development, which, if I'm looking at the colors right, you've got apartments on the upper left, you've got apartments on the bottom left, and if you move the park, you're going to put all that big density up north with no buffer in between. So, you have to at some point look at what's the best for this particular design. To the people who want us to honor the minimums in the code, this is a planned development, which means that we set the minimums. We are negotiating this process. That we are following the code by allowing for negotiated settlements. The deviations that they're asking for are, really not as onerous as many others that we've seen. Thank you. I do wish that there was more landscape area. That would be one thing I would love to see. I would love to see a commitment to living landscape and not trees that die in a year and nobody waters them or replaces them. I understand the going down to the lot coverage for the structures for the one-story houses, but I also believe, if I'm not wrong, staff, that ADUs do not count in lot coverage. So you've asked us.
No, it counts for lot coverage.
Lot coverage.
Not
Doesn't count
density.
in
Not density, okay, so that would still be there, okay. So anyway, that, I think the alley, 25 feet, I get it. My house, I lived in the middle of town. I live side to an alley. And I know that there's a lot of people with a lot of toys, and one of the things I'd love to see is some kind of city restrictions to the size of some of the toys that are allowed to park on city streets and within neighborhoods, because it creates overcrowding in addition to the density. So I don't know if that's something a homeowners association might be willing to tackle, but that's not in our purview, I don't think. Anyway, I yield.
To the, kind of to the affordable housing, I think maybe one of the suggestions that the South Arc has proposed is the first right of refusal. I don't know which lots or how many, or if you guys are willing to have any discussions about that. Sort of a first right of refusal to local workforce.
I think that what
They still have to qualify, and it's not a deed restricted unit.
Well, it would be deed restricted for a certain amount of
It
time
was for 5 years or
community,
something,
and then if, after that time, you can't sell it, nobody comes forward, then it opens up, but it's at market rate. But it still is a deed restriction, and that's what we've been talking about with South Arc, and I think you and I talked about that, Greg. It would be a really nice thing to do. Yeah. I think at South Arc, it was 50% deed restricted, income qualified, 25% deed restricted without income qualifications for community, and the other 25% was full market value with no restrictions. So at least you're allowing for people who live here full-time to have first crack, which goes a long way to my comment about deed restrictions. Thanks, Greg. Yeah.
Real quick comment. I mean, I think it's a beautiful neighborhood, a great design. I would echo Dan's point about the mid-block connections. I tend to like them, and I think taken, as a perspective, the whole neighborhood, one of the things I have little kids, and it is hard to cross the street when the cars are lined up the whole way. So I think there's a great benefit to having those.
Anybody else?
I have a question on the development of 120, the improvements. Would that be done in conjunction with this development? So before a certificate of occupancies and that sort of thing? Okay. Okay, I don't see that anywhere here in the packet, Christie. So would that be added as a condition on the plan development or the subdivision, or both?
I would say both.
Okay. And as far as the bump outs, what are we calling them? The
Bump outs, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of
the
mid-block.
single, I think that we should encourage we should encourage a discussion or something between the Public Works Department and the developer to keep these beautifications and pedestrian-friendly features in the plan. And I don't know where in this packet we would put that. Or if that's just a recommendation to council.
I would say it would be a recommendation that leave the bump outs.
What, would we put it in a motion, or?
Yeah, probably under the condition where it says meet all public works directors.
That's
Yeah,
where
because
I'm
that's
at.
in the conditions.
Yeah, that's where I'm
And
at.
just say,
Without the
Yes.
recommendation for.
yeah.
Hang on. Okay,
I see that, and,
yeah, I've got that here too.
um,
And on,
Oh, right up there.
Christie, on the 12-foot front setback to include porches, would that go as a recommendation on both as well? Or is that a plat note?
I would say it'd be a plat note.
So we don't need to mention that? Everybody's already
Want to have
agreed?
greater specificity. Since
Yeah.
we asked the question here, I think it should be.
Yeah, I would say add it under the conditions of the plan development.
Okay.
Since it is a setback request.
Okay.
That the porches, the
To
12.
include porches?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay. And so that would be, instead of like 3, we would add 4. Okay.
yes, yes.
Is there anything else we need to do? Yep.
Would you want to go to question first?
I'm willing to break protocol, but I don't want to get into.
I'm sorry, I just really quick, I won't take much of your time.
Please come to the mic.
Okay, nothing in any of the paperwork that I read mentioned an expansion of County Road 120. And so this is being brought up after the public comment time. I mean, I have a lot of questions about that. I don't know if we can just say that as an afterthought of like, yeah, we're going to expand County Road 120, we're going to put parking on it. Like, what does that even mean? I don't know why that's suddenly just being dropped on us at the 11th hour. So I just have a lot of questions, and I think that was very inappropriate not to include that in the information that we had accessible. I don't think it's fair for you guys to vote on this when we didn't get to understand what they mean by that or how that's going to affect us in traffic and getting in and out of my house. So I'm just really surprised that it seems like there's a lot of things here with the traffic numbers that they didn't even have the right numbers for the units that seem really thrown together. It just doesn't seem like there's any regard for the people who live around this, who are trying to make space for this and welcome this. And it seems like these things are really thrown together, and I'm just have a lot of questions. Thank you.
And if I could respond, just to Ann real quick. I hear you, and remember that we are the Planning Commission. We recommend to council. The council will have a first and second reading if this is passed, and so there will, and that is weeks away, so there would be time for additional public comment and for communication on. I hope so too.
Question to staff. When they do a traffic study, do they assume 100% full-time occupancy?
I think that's a better question for the applicant, for the traffic engineer.
The traffic study numbers are all based on, it's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. It's a national manual, it's published, and they have published numbers of how many trips are generated by each land use type. So we have numbers for single-family residences, we have numbers for condos and townhomes, and we have numbers for apartments.
So it sounds like it assumes people live there.
Yes, so it's each unit is assigned a number of, generates so many trips, and it's based upon statistical studies that have been done. I mean, most of those studies are based upon more urban areas than Slide is. Our personal analysis on areas around here, they end up being pretty low, but we're still using the national standard for the trip generation rates.
So what you're saying is that we generate more trips than the data?
Our subdivisions we've seen, just from our observations, working here for decades now, our subdivisions typically generate a lower number.
Yeah. Right, which makes sense to me because, you know, our subdivisions are probably no more than 2/3, if that, you know, full-time occupants. Thanks.
Dan?
I guess the only thing I would add to this is I'm really skeptical of, as an engineer, traffic engineers and assumptions based on the whole country. Like, it's a lot of BS in my opinion. And I guess I'll just go back to, let's plan the town we want to see. Let's not build 4-lane roads because we might have traffic, right? Like, what do we want to see in 20, 30 years? And just think about it that way. Like,
people walking.
What's that?
Yeah. See people walking and cars going slowly through
and I'm
there.
not here to tell you what you want. Like, vote on what, like, the citizens vote on referenda, and we all hear our neighbors and constituents, or whatever you want to call them. But I guess I just feel like it's really hard to rely on one traffic study, is all I'm saying. And if we're talking a good talk about, we're going to make this town bikeable, and let's face it, it's not a large town, just geographically side to side. Maybe we can encourage a situation where someone for one of those trips gets on a bike and doesn't, you know, back a Yukon out of their garage. And I love to drive, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we'll drive a Yukon, but sometimes it's just not appropriate in this town. So I would be skeptical about some of the higher numbers in that traffic study. That's it.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, I guess. David Lady was not able to make it tonight, but he did send us some communications throughout the day. One of the things he did mention is that SEH, one of the local engineering companies, has done some projections for this area based off of the potential unit counts and on various parcels. And he indicated that they had no concerns about CR 120 being able to handle that amount of traffic. Obviously, the improvements that they're proposing can improve the situation, but that was David's communication to us.
Okay, thank you. How you guys feeling?
Tired.
Francie, you're ready to make a motion?
Sure. Yeah, all right. So we'll do the proposed plan development first. I guess what I want to do, because the potential motion is just pretty straightforward, but I think we need to go through the points.
For the PD?
The PD, yeah. So I make a motion to recommend council approve the plan development for the Angel View Major Subdivision with the staff recommendations and a few changes. Where is that? Hang on.
Page 17?
Yeah, I know, but I've got it in a different place. As follows. First, the plat notes to be updated. I will abbreviate.
Yeah.
The A, B, and C as required, municipal code as required, signature blocks, update dimensional standards as shown, and remove the existing inclusionary housing comparisons. Then number 2, the applicant must meet the requirements of the Public Works Director with the exception of recommending keeping the
Bump outs.
The bump outs. What are we calling those?
Bulb outs, what do we call them?
It's the,
I was saying bulb outs.
no, but he said,
Mid-block
he said he
connection.
only,
Block ones, 'cause
Mid-block
that's not the
connections.
corner.
I know, I understand that, but he was saying he only wanted one
Oh, wait, we have this mid-block connection.
mid-block connection, to keep the mid-block connections with the bump outs as recommended by the developer, and also to meet all of the other city engineering consultants' approval of the subdivision. Prior to building permit submittal, we want the Parks and Rec fee in lieu paid. That's number 3. Then I'm going to add number 4 to update the traffic study to include original Angel View and surrounding properties. And incorporate those results into the improvements on 120 to be provided by the developer. Is there anything else?
That's well
Oh,
stated.
porches, right. 4, that would be 4. Number 5 would be the 12-foot front setback deviation, 12-foot front setback to include exterior and interior, to include porches. So move. Unless there's anything that needs to be added before we second. Is there anything else good?
Second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, we have a motion and a second
That's for the
to
plan
approve the
development.
plan development with the, with staff's recommendations plus amendments.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Foley,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Walker, Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
or is he no?
no,
You keep
No,
doing.
we're good.
Okay, sorry.
just Bush.
Just push it.
Okay.
Kenny can vote, I don't.
Motion passes.
Maybe next meeting.
Maybe next time.
Okay.
Okay, now we need to do, hang on, I'm moving a
Major
couple things
subdivision.
around here. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is make a motion for the, I make a motion to recommend the approval of City Council for the Angel View Major Subdivision with the staff recommendations and a few changes. Some of the staff recommendations are the same as we noted in the PD. Number 1, follow plat notes to be added to the major subdivision prior to recording. That's A, B, and C, and the C talks about the streetscape diversity, which we've reviewed, the primary roof forms, which we've reviewed. The applicant meets the requirements, this is number 2, of the Public Works Director. I'd like to say that, however, we say it the same as the subdivision to keep the, I'm back to bump outs. What are we calling that?
Mid-block.
Mid-block, to keep the mid-block connections and the bump outs as the developer has outlined. Number 4 would be the open space requirement. Number 5, hang on, let me just move this down here.
There's 2 number 4s.
2 4s.
Okay.
And not a 3.
All right, so 2 was the bump outs or the midway. 4 is the,
That's actually
3 is the building.
3,
permits and
sorry,
minimal.
yes, 3 is the open space. 4, prior to recordation of the subdivision plat, developer shall enter into a subdivision improvement that guarantees the construction of the public improvements that are required for the project. And I want to also add here the other additional points that we put in the plan development, that there will be an updated traffic study to include the original Angel View and surrounding properties, and that would be incorporated into the improvements on 120 to be paid for by the developer. And then, I don't know what number that is. Maybe
That was 5.
5.
5.
And then the last one would be the 12-foot front setbacks to include porches. So I think, did I miss anything?
Nope, you got it.
I so move.
Second.
Oh, Dan gets it. Oh, no, Dan.
Do we need to go to the replay?
Yeah, I think so. Where's the film?
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the major subdivision with the recommended requirements and a couple others that mirror the PD. Any further discussion?
No, sir.
Bomer,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Fillet,
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Is it dinner time?
Might be breakfast.
I think it's Miller time.
Breakfast? Yeah. Where is the bottle of wine?
All right,
Chairman, what's next?
we are on to updates.
Please, none.
So, a couple announcements. I think I mentioned this before, but March 6th, so that's next Wednesday evening, there'll be an open house presentation from, it starts up at 6 o'clock, presentation at 6:30 at the Scout Hut regarding the first and D apartments. So we've gotten
Okay.
elevations for that. I think a lot of folks will be pretty interested in seeing those. Opportunity for public to comment on that, and then there'll be a follow-up survey. The Land Use Advisory Committee will be meeting tomorrow evening in these very chambers to go over the latest draft of Installment 3, which is the design and development standards. I know GIF has been just like chomping at the bit to see these for like a long time.
That's tomorrow evening?
That's tomorrow evening.
Is that open to the public?
You can come and watch. It's not going to be on, it's not going to be televised or anything like that because it is just a committee meeting, but there's nothing to keep y'all from observing.
When is that?
It is tomorrow at 5:30 to 7:30. That's what we're gonna
5:30 to 9:30.
Yeah.
Right.
So the next step after that, we'll get feedback, and there's going to be opportunity, first and foremost, for the advisory committee to provide feedback in person tomorrow night, and then online through the Conveo system that Clarion will then incorporate into some changes. Then we'll be bringing that back, or maybe kind of in concert with that, to you all at a work session on the 12th
Of March?
of March, specifically in regards to Installment 3.
Okay, I'll be here.
And get some feedback from you all during that. We'll get try to get you the most updated version of that as we can before the work session. And then, what else we got going
Yeah.
on that's worth mentioning at the point?
Really love reading.
There's probably a few other things, but I want to hand it over to Christy to make a little announcement too.
Oh. Tonight is my last planning commission night. I will be transitioning, I will be the city clerk. I'll be appointed on March 5th. So my last day in the community development department is March 8th, but I will still be around.
You better be.
So I told you I'll be-
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
We will certainly miss looking over for answers for you.
You have two jobs
And
now.
thank you.
Yeah, big congratulations to Christy. I think it was very fitting that Ronnie gave the accolades to her this evening that
Yeah.
he did, even though he had no idea.
Right.
Yeah, so big thanks to her. And yeah, we'll still be knocking on her door.
Right.
I mean, she's got 20 plus years of experience
I know.
over here.
You can do both.
Yeah, easy. The one thing I do want to mention is just remind you that we do have a joint work session on March 18th.
I will not be here.
Okay. You won't be here either?
One day, they-
You won't be here either?
Coming back.
Who will be?
I'll be here, I believe.
Okay.
Thinking.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I gotta look
Okay.
at my.
Yeah, I think I'm gone that
I
following
won't be
weekend.
here on
What
the
day is
6th.
that?
That's spring break, isn't it?
What
No,
is the
the-
sixth?
it's-
The next
is it
week.
spring break? Oh, it might.
No, it is spring break.
The
you're
6th
right.
is the
that at 5,
first and
6?
D
It's
meeting,
it's at
right?
6.
Is the what again?
First, the meeting at First and D, is that the 6th? Yeah.
That is,
At the
yes.
Scout Hut? Did you say Scout Hut? For that?
Yes, it's at Scout Hut, I'm sorry.
Okay, good.
What, the joint session is it, Scott?
March.
No, the First and D
It
meeting.
is.
I guess,
You can tell we've been here too long.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we can check with
Don't
Joe.
tell me anything else.
Yeah, it's a lot. but we
Make
could-
a motion to adjourn.
Is it time? I so move.
I third.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think
Thank
it's
you all.
30.